What If Legend presents What If Naruto Was Obsessed with Power.
Uzumaki Naruto was born to be a shinobi. He was supposed to be a killer, a protector of unparalleled skill. His lineage and the demon in his gut ensured that. In canon, his growth was stunted. In here, he had a reason to be strong. He has to survive. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 1, Prologue, Questions Without Answers. They will hunt you, Uzumaki Naruto. Blue eyes, normally vibrant with energy, were shadowed, contemplative even. It was a sight to behold on the blonde-haired, blue-eyed 7-year-old, though no one was around to see it. A gust of wind gently ruffled the boy's hair as he overlooked the village from on top of the Yondaime Hokage's head. The eyes, while staring at the vast village below, saw none of it. They saw not the administration building, nor the Grand Archive, the Shinobi Academy, or any other building of note. They did, however, see the faint outlines of the numerous shinobi hurriedly entering and exiting the Uchiha district. The once proud, sprawling clan compound was now littered with the blood and corpses of its former members. And he had met the man who had done the deed. What? The short blonde asked his uninvited house guest. The boy had experienced some frightening moments in his life, not the least of which had been what he had determined to be an assassination attempt when he was 4. This one was beginning to move up the list. Those red eyes were both awesome and terrifying, their burning intensity belying the churning emotions behind the emotionless mask his guest wore. They will hunt you, Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Itachi spoke. His voice was nearly a monotone, lacking both emotion and inflection that was commonly used. They will hunt you. They will find you. And they will kill you. Just behind the terror he was feeling, only compounded by the blood-spattered ANBU armor the teenager wore, he realized that the shinobi was giving him a message. Why? Why are you telling me this? Naruto asked, his voice quavering. To serve as a warning. Those who would hunt you are both numerous and powerful, some far more powerful than myself, Naruto's once silent protector told him. There will come a time when the Sandaime's protection will not be enough, a time when this village can no longer protect you. I warn you now so that you may be ready for that day. Naruto, in his entranced state of heightened fear, could not even nod in acceptance of the teenager's point. Who? He squeaked. Inwardly, he mentally berated himself of showing such weakness in front of the teenager, though he really couldn't help it. An entire village full of people whose animosity was only barely concealed couldn't break him, so how could this lone teenager inspire such fear in him? Itachi paused, seeming to weigh whether or not he should tell Naruto, before Akatsuki, and a man named Uchiha Madara. Abruptly, the sense of imminent doom and terror subsided, left with only confusion as the red eyes faded to black. The teenage ANBU made a single seal, before vanishing silently with a small gust of wind. His parting words were but a faded whisper upon a breeze. Survive, Uzumaki Naruto. Needless to say, he hadn't been able to sleep. That led him to where he was now, seated atop the stone head of Konoha's greatest hero. It wasn't the most common occurrence to find the blonde there, but it was one of the boy's few true haunts, a place where he could be alone to think, away from the judgmental eyes of the villagers. Naruto usually avoided this spot, preferring to spend his free time training or executing a well-thought-out prank on some unsuspecting villager, rather than thinking. Thinking was boring, and often painful. While many, his academy classmates included, would say this as confirmation of his lack of intelligence, it was far from the case. While not the sharpest kunai in the holster, Naruto was far from unintelligent. He merely applied himself to other pursuits. Thinking was painful because it inevitably led to questions. Tough questions, painful questions, and questions that no one seemed to want to answer. Not even Old Man Sandaime would answer those questions, and he was one of the few people who were nice to Naruto. Thinking led to questions like, who his parents were, and why did no one seem to know who they were when he asked? Why did a man in black try to kill him 3 years ago? Why did everyone seem to hate him, down to the last villager? With such unanswerable questions plaguing his young mind, it would come as no surprise to anyone that the boy did his best to avoid true introspective thought at all costs. He succeeded too. Not this time, though. This time, there was no avoiding the questions, though they were of a different sort. Who was Akatsuki? Who was Uchiha Madara? Naruto hardly felt that he could go to the Sandaime with questions like these. After all, he couldn't answer the easy questions, like who Naruto's parents were. Why would the old man be able to answer these? And why would Itachi tell him what he did? If nothing else, Naruto's thoughts were revolving around this one question the most. He had learned of the teenage ANBU's name when he had made his way to where he was now. He had heard many on-duty shinobi speak the name in whispers as he snuck by them. Others had cursed it violently for the destruction he had single-handedly carried out. The fact that the executioner of the Uchiha clan had warned him of people out to kill him only made the question that much more confusing, and the answer that much more tantalizing. Not for the first time in his 7 years of living, Naruto was confused. It wasn't a feeling he liked. He needed answers, and he needed them quickly, before he could decide what he was going to do. Unbidden, a statement from one of his senseis, he thought the scarred man's name was Irika, made its way to his mind. Information is the backbone of the true shinobi. Without it, a living shinobi was soon to become a dead shinobi. His course set, he would gather the necessary information before setting a plan of action. According to Itachi, his life was in danger. This was a matter to be taken most seriously, even more seriously than his pranks and his dream to be Hokage. He couldn't just wing it like he usually did. Blue eyes coming back into focus, Naruto snapped his attention to the circular, black building that served as the Grand Archive. It wasn't a place that Naruto frequented often. Memories of his last visit to the archive made themselves known, and Naruto scratched the back of his head, letting out a nervous laugh, unknowingly dispelling the tension in his body. This may prove to be a bit harder than he had first imagined. As the archive workers were still bitter about having their workplace desecrated, orange was a great color, in Naruto's opinion at least. He was left with only one option. It had taken him the better part of 2 months, but he had managed to master the Henj no Jutsu. It hadn't been easy, not by any stretch of the mill. As neither of his instructors, the scarred man was named Irika, had consented to teach him the E-rank ninjutsu, they had said he was nowhere near advanced enough. He had had to resort to more extreme measures. His first had been his tried and true patented spying. He had snuck out of class in order to watch some of the older students practice the technique, and had inadvertently overheard what their instructors were telling them to do with their chakra. Now, Naruto was far more intelligent than his classmates and teachers gave him credit for, but he wasn't at the level to be able to reverse engineer a technique just by watching it and listening to some vague tips not meant for his ears. His second measure had been the academy library, small though it was. He had thought Suzume-sensei was going to have a heart attack when he asked her where to find a scroll on the Henj. The mousy Chunin had looked put out at being forced to help the whiskered student, but had been unable to find a good enough excuse to refuse the blonde. From there it had been naught but nigh endless hours of training as he attempted to figure out the secrets behind the Henj. It likely would have taken him longer, had fortune not smiled on him as he was listening in on a conversation between an older student and an instructor. Apparently, the trainee was using too much chakra for the Henj to work properly, and the instructor set the girl to doing the leaf-sticking exercise in order to help the girl limit her flow of chakra into the jutsu. The scroll had said nothing of the sort was necessary, and it was only sheer luck that Naruto had happened upon that gem of information. Once he had completed the leaf-sticking exercise, no easy feat for the blonde, he discovered he had a lot of chakra, more than all the students in his class. At least, the Henj became that much easier, and the mastery of the technique finally boiled down to sheer concentration. And so, he found himself once more outside the Grand Archive, staring dispassionately at the symbol for fire that was engraved on the side. He took a strand of mousy brown hair in his fingers, quickly checking to make sure that the Henj was still in effect, before striding forward confidently. Opening the double glass doors, Naruto felt the stale air of the archive brush over him, grimacing in distaste as the smell of old parchment and paper made itself apparent. Moving quickly, he wanted to spend as little time as physically possible in here. He approached the reference center. Stopping in front of the half-circle of wood, his presence was noticed by an attractive, auburn-haired girl who looked no older than 13. "May I help you?" she asked politely, her voice having a pleasant lilt to it. A smile appeared on her face as she took in the form of the 7-year-old. Naruto barely withheld a scowl. It had been this girl who had denied him entry 2 months previous, citing that he was banned until such a point when he became a full-fledged shinobi. She had been rather polite about it, but it didn't raise Naruto's opinion of her. "Where can I find information on the Uchiha clan?" he asked, using his best innocent look. It was complete with wide blue eyes, the only defining feature Naruto had left unchanged by his henge. The girl didn't bat an eye when he asked for information about the once great clan. He assumed that he wasn't the only one looking to become more informed of them since their rather untimely demise. "Right this way, dear," she said with a smile. It was a pretty smile. He followed the attractive girl to the middle of the library that had been marked and designated as clans. From what little Naruto understood about the archive, he knew that this area held all the non-classified information on Konoha's various shinobi clans. The information was far from sensitive, though it often contained some small amount of information about the better-known clan techniques. The majority, however, dealt with clan history. Hopefully, that would be all that Naruto would need. He quietly thanked the pretty girl who had helped him, receiving an offer for any future help that he may need. Her name was Mai. He tentatively opened the book that the assistant had gotten for him, and was promptly confused. The history book, like all others, started at the beginning. It was a general book, dealing with some information dating back before the founding of Konoha, though not much. It came as quite the surprise to find the name Uchiha Madara on the first page. Naruto sighed heavily. The book stated that Madara had been one of Konoha's founding fathers, alongside Senju Hashirama, Konoha's Shodai. That made him older than the Sandaime by a few decades. It was going to be one of those days. That, of course, raised even more questions. Naruto highly doubted that Itachi had intentionally misled him. Naruto had had a few encounters with the Uchiha before that night, and it simply wasn't in the stoic teenager's nature to give misinformation. The boy had been the epitome of professionalism. Not to mention, he was in ANBU. Everyone in the village knew that those guys had no sense of humor. With all other avenues exhausted, Naruto's young mind was forced to wrap around the idea that either Itachi had been wrong, or that Madara really was alive. Regardless, he had work to do. Even if Itachi had been wrong about Madara, Naruto didn't think he would mislead him about having some shady organization after his head. Itachi had also said that some members were stronger than him. Now, while Naruto had no real idea of how strong Itachi was, he had apparently wiped out the Uchiha clan single-handedly. That took some serious skills. If people stronger than Itachi were after him, Naruto shuddered. He didn't want to think about what might happen. Hell, he didn't even know if these mysterious murderers were even stronger than the Sandaime. 2 months ago, he wouldn't have even entertained the notion. The old man was Hokage. He was the strongest. The last 2 months of observation and training had opened his eyes some, though, and Itachi's message hadn't done much to help him keep a stable worldview. The truth of the matter was, the old man was, well, old. While old didn't mean weak, he was still the Hokage after all. Being old certainly didn't make him any better. Not physically, at least. He couldn't remember how many times the old man had preached to him about how a shinobi needed to use his mind just as much, if not more, than his body. Naruto was starting to see how that might be necessary. Itachi was a thinker, if all he had heard about the prodigy lately had been true. The old man was a thinker, a great one, if Iruka-sensei's lectures about Konoha's history were to be believed. Hell, this Madara character was likely a thinker. If he really was alive, which was doubtful, the book said he had lost a battle with the Shodai, and had never been seen again, then he must have been pretty smart to survive unnoticed for so long. Naruto shook his head, closing his book lightly, watching dispassionately as the resulting displaced air flooded some pages that were spread across his table. Looking outside, he noticed that some time had passed. The sun had moved enough that a couple of hours might well have gone by. How he hated thinking. He stood fluidly, stretching his tight muscles. Naruto brushed an errant lock of brown hair out of his face as he moved to the front of the archive. He gave his book to the attendant. It wasn't the same girl as before, he noted. Too bad. Stepping out of the grand building, his eyes automatically found the face of the fourth Hokage. His idol. He shook his head. Nothing was the same anymore. His grand dream to be Hokage seemed insignificant compared to the monumental mountain that had been dropped in front of him. With becoming Hokage, he had had time. Plenty of it, in fact. The path had been fairly clear-cut as well. Genin, Chunin, Jonin, they were all milestones on his grand journey. Now, though, he had to survive. He sighed heavily, it was becoming a pattern. Glancing around the street, Naruto observed the crowd moving back and forth. Not a single one looked his way. That wasn't anything new, at least. It really was amazing how alone you could be in a crowd. Unbidden, a scowl crossed his 7-year-old visage. Had he looked in the mirror, he would have wondered who was staring back. What did these people have against him? What had he ever done? Nothing, save a few rather harmless pranks. They had ignored him even before that. Acknowledgement? Fuck that. He had bigger things to worry about now. Akatsuki? He tested the name of his new enemy. A familiar determination spread through him, igniting his nerves and giving him goosebumps. He'd show them. All of them. No villager, ninja, or even Uchiha Madara himself would stop him. Uzumaki Naruto wasn't going down without a fight, and a damn good one at that. Believe it! Naruto exhaled slowly as his kick split the air. Pulling it back at the knee, while still keeping the leg airborne, he kicked out once more, just as slowly. He had been doing much of that lately. His new determination to survive had sparked sessions of intense training. Unfortunately, his instructors at the academy had been less than helpful in his endeavors to better himself. They had said he needed a more solid foundation before he could learn more advanced techniques. Naruto was starting to see what they meant. Before, he would have simply brushed their comments off, disregarding them in the face of his undeniable awesomeness. It turned out that he wasn't really that awesome. He had Uchiha Sasuke to thank for that little lesson. Unfortunately, he had apparently made such a bad impression on his teachers that they were unwilling to help, even when he asked for some remedial lessons. That had pissed the blonde off like nothing else. Here he was, swallowing his pride and looking to advance his skills, and they simply brushed him off. Weren't they paid to teach people? Last he checked, he was still a person. Apparently they had more pressing matters to attend to. He had considered appealing to the Hokage. Surely he would be able to make them help out, but had hesitated. He had been somewhat wary of the office of late. Itachi's warning still rang true in his ears during his moments of introspection. There will come a time when the Sandame's protection will not be enough. If he couldn't solve a small problem like this without help from the old man, how would he ever be able to survive against a group of ninja dedicated to his death? That decided it. He would deal with his problems on his own. That, naturally, had led him to where he was presently, dancing through the academy's taijutsu katas. Well, more like stumbling through. It turned out that learning taijutsu wasn't all that easy on one's own. Scrolls could only help so much, as one couldn't really be sure if they were doing the move correctly. Stances were hard to gauge. Proper footing was impossible to know, one could never be sure of block, and most all but the simplest maneuvers were almost out of reach. If one wanted to do them right, that is. Learning crappy taijutsu from a scroll was easy. Sitting on the grass gently, Naruto pulled a ball of bandages from his hip pouch. He began wrapping his hands. When he didn't move through the katas of the academy, he punched logs. It was boring, mindless, and tedious, but it helped to strengthen his fists and was therefore useful. If it was useful, he did it. That was part of his new nindo, his ninja way. Punching, at least, was something he knew he was doing correctly. It was one of the few things the academy instructors had consented to help him with. It fit the MO of the staff there perfectly, at least in regards to him. They almost never outright refused to help him, and when they did they usually had some contrived reason, but they always did the bare minimum when it came to their help. Useless Chunin, the blonde thought uncharitably. Brooding and negative thoughts weren't something Naruto liked to have most of the time. They certainly didn't help keep his spirits up in regards to his new objective, but he found himself having them more and more. This was especially the case when the various offenses against him kept piling up. Just the other day he had overheard Yamanaka Ino asking for help with her taijutsu, an occurrence that wasn't common, and Irika-sensei had been only too happy to help. Bloody hypocrite. He wasn't sure if these movements against him were new or if he was just more observant of them, but they were all downright annoying. Some were to the point of being deliberately harmful to him. His instructors wouldn't teach him much of anything, shopkeepers sold him crappy goods, if at all, and that didn't even begin to cover how many people outright glared at him when he walked by. His former dreams of acknowledgement and acceptance were becoming distant memories as he noticed the hatred the Konoha populace seemed to have for him. He wondered how he had brushed it off before. Fury spiked through him. What had he done to them? What the hell could he have possibly done to deserve such hatred? The answer was nothing. The training log met his fist with a brutal thunk, and Naruto recoiled in pain before deflating. He had channeled all of his pent-up anger into that punch. He didn't even splinter the wood. Kami, damn it! He cursed softly. He cradled his right arm to his body, watching as the blood seeped through the bandages. He jumped in surprise, startled as a hand came to rest on his shoulder. The sight that met his eyes was an odd one. It warms my heart indeed to see such youthful fire burning in one so young, the man said. He was dressed in a green leotard, likely made of spandex, orange leg warmers, and a standard flak vest that was issued to all Konoha ninja chunin and above. Naruto, however, had his eyes fixed on the man's face. Those things above his eyes had to be caterpillars. There was no other explanation for eyebrows that big. Who are you? Naruto asked, complete with all the bluntness of a 7-year-old. Who needed tact? Apparently, Mato Guy didn't, as he introduced himself exuberantly, much to Naruto's confusion. I couldn't help but notice your practice of taijutsu. A fine endeavor indeed for as young as yourself, but, he trailed off, his head cocked to the side thoughtfully. The cleverness that had turned Naruto into a rather infamous prankster reared its head. Violently. Is there something wrong with my taijutsu, Mato-san? He asked, sensing an opening. The green-clad man was strong, of that there was no doubt in the boy's mind. If he was willing to help him. I'm afraid so, Naruto-kun. Naruto hadn't had to introduce himself. For you see, taijutsu is an art that needs to be taught from sensei to student, and scrolls can only take one so far. Guy's voice had adopted a lecturing, almost sage-like quality. Do not fret, though. Konoha's beautiful green beast would be more than happy to help one so clearly in the springtime of youth. Naruto wasn't quite sure what the man meant about beasts and the like, but he was pretty sure that he had just offered to teach him. That wasn't something he was about to pass up. 1 month. 4 weeks. If he ever looked back, Naruto was sure that he would remember these past weeks. The aches, pains, and almost never-ending soreness would ensure that. Guy had been impressed with his stamina regardless, but Naruto wished he could have done more. Truly, the man deserved his self-determined moniker. He was a beast indeed. 4 weeks of almost nothing but taijutsu training. He couldn't be happier with his progress. He had been intense at the start, hoping to impress the helpful Jonin enough so that he wouldn't simply brush him off. That had lasted until he had looked the man up. His intensity had likely tripled after that. Mato Guy. A taijutsu master. The taijutsu master if the records were to be believed. The man was Konoha's foremost expert on the particular branch of the ninja arts. He was also a rather formidable Jonin. He ranked somewhere in Konoha's top 10. And he had just decided to help him, for no other reason than to help out a child full of youthful fire. It was amazing. Looked like even he could catch a lucky break sometimes. The man really knew his subject too. Stances became rigid. Blocks and guards were solidified. Punches, kicks, and other maneuvers became fluid under the man's teaching. His speed had increased too. The eccentric Jonin had been kind enough to foot the bill for a set of leg weights for Naruto, though he had stressed the concept of proper rest. It wouldn't do to injure himself because he bit off more than he could chew. Really, he couldn't have been luckier. The standing invitation to train with him and his youthful student was going to be exploited as much as possible. He knew he was far from a taijutsu master. He likely wasn't even the best in his class. That honor belonged to the enigmatic Uchiha Sasuke, certified genius that he was. Even so, his brief time under Guy's tutelage had placed him at the middle of the pack at the least, as recent spars had shown. He was likely better than that, but it was always best to maintain a humble attitude toward one's own skills. His humility had been forced upon him via necessity. It was all for the best, however, as he was finally starting to make some progress. A solid foundation was the key to future success. Taijutsu hadn't been the only thing that Guy had helped him with. His accuracy had improved tremendously with thrown weapons. His technique had been inefficient, apparently. It wasn't overly bad and would get the job done, but he lost a lot of potential power behind his throws, and accuracy was hard to come by, especially as he wasn't always using the exact same motion each time. Some of the anger he had felt then threatened to spill out as he shut the door to his apartment, all one room of it. He had learned his throwing technique at the academy. It fit the way the teachers operated perfectly. The taught technique would get the job done. It just wasn't as good as it could or should be. The inferior technique could easily be blamed on Naruto's lack of attention and practice, if it ever came under question. He had vented his anger in the taijutsu work he had done later that day, though some of it still remained. His emotional control wasn't helped any by the liberal helping of glares he received as he wove through Konoha's morning crowds. He kept his eyes firmly forward, if not on his feet. He knew it wasn't below some villagers to cuff him if he appeared antagonistic, especially in a crowd. That had been the start of his bubbly persona. They had no reason to do anything to him if he was constantly friendly and outgoing. What a waste that had been. Striving for their acknowledgement had likely been the largest waste of his time in his 7 years of living. He still did to some extent, as only an emotionally neglected child could, but he had much bigger things to worry about. The game had changed. Striving for the acknowledgement and attention of an antagonistic populace had no place in his fight to survive. It was a refreshing change of mind. Blinking, Naruto noticed with some wonder that his feet had brought him to the academy. Had he really been that lost in thought? He scoffed. His academy instructors would likely have to pick their jaws off the floor if they knew how much he was thinking these days. It clashed horribly with their view of him. That likely wouldn't change for some time, though he suspected his new effort in class would draw some attention. He didn't hold out hope that it would be the good kind. He took his seat with a short nod and smiled to Inuzuka Kiba. The canine ninja was one of his running buddies whenever they had decided to cut class, though Naruto was seriously cutting back. Any idea what today's lecture's gonna be about? He asked Shikamaru gruffly. The boy was smart. He was also lazy. He thought he was likely the laziest person in all of Fire Country. Akimichi Shifuji disagreed. He thought he was the laziest person in the whole elemental nations. The boy grunted. He was obviously too bothered to answer. Sleep was a full-time job for Shikamaru, much like eating was a full-time job for Chuji. Naruto didn't complain. He often got to mooch some of the boy's endless chips. Too troublesome to answer? He asked with a foxy grin. The lack of answer was expected. Bah, it'll probably be boring all the same. Right, Chuji? Probably Naruto. Chip? Thanks, mate. The lecture was boring. Not that that was ever truly in question. While Naruto admitted that the scarred Chunin knew his stuff, he could at least make an effort to make it somewhat engaging. It didn't help matters that the information likely wouldn't serve any purpose beyond the academy tests. Who really needed to know about the mysterious figure that was the Shodai's wife? Not everyone was Haruno Sakura or Yamanaka Ino with their academic drive. A soft smile rose to the blonde's face as he thought about the pretty blonde-haired girl. After the lecture, Iruka brought the class to the weapons range. Each student had a slot where they were supposed to sink 6 shuriken, the standard brace size, into the target. It was harder than Iruka and Mizuki, his assistant, made it look. Practice normally went on for half an hour, while the 2 instructors would make their way through the group of students and correct them where they saw fit. Naruto was often left for last. More often than not, his instruction got cut off when the practice ended. He could deal with that though. Accuracy was one thing that could be improved on one's own. Now that his technique was fixed up, he hoped that his accuracy would rise. It proved true not a few moments later. He smiled in satisfaction as he caught his breath. It had become heavier as he put force into the throws. 4 of the 6 were embedded in the target. 1 was not even an inch off the bullseye. 2/3 was good, considering he was barely at 1/3 just a month ago. Progress was slow, he thought as he removed the shuriken from the target, but it was still progress. Moving back to his starting line, he launched all 6 stars again, this time 1 at a time. 4 out of the 6 stuck again, but 1 had glanced off another, the angle so perfect that it had directed the shuriken into the bullseye. His smirk threatened to split his face when he caught sight of Iruka's raised brows. "What did you think of that, Iruka-sensei?" he asked obnoxiously. The scarred man called an end to practice without an answer. He'd have to work on that trick. It might come in handy someday, though he suspected that it might be easier with kunai. The short blades were a larger target by design. They were also heavier, making it easier to effect them in flight while still keeping on target. Shuriken were too light for that sort of intentional showmanship. The rest of the class didn't need to know that though. Uchiha Sasuke had an unknown look on his face. It seemed calculating to Naruto's untrained eyes, but who was to say? From target practice, the class moved to the center of the academy's designated training ground. That meant it was time for sparring. The one-on-one bouts were viewed by the whole class. Once the fight was finished, the instructor, be it Iruka or Mizuki, would review the fight with the class as a whole. They often went over strategy, and what worked and what didn't. The students were often tasked with coming up with their own solutions to the problems they had, the idea being that one learned more if they fixed the problem themselves. The instructors were always available to help, however. At least if your name wasn't Uzumaki Naruto. The fights proceeded without incident. Kiba had too much focus on full frontal attacks. Shikamaru was too defensive. Chuji made openings for himself, but hesitated too much. Sakura needed more punching power. Ino needed a haircut, though not much else. Shino was too stiff with his movements. Hinata hesitated twice as much as Chuji, though her Jukin made up for most of her other faults. In the end, it was down to Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto didn't know the meaning of the word cliché, but that's how he would have described it if he did. Iruka-sensei was most likely trying to take him down a peg or 5. Uchiha Sasuke was the class resident genius. No one save Shino and Kiba had ever managed to get more than a glancing blow on the boy. Naruto didn't much care. The class spread out from the two fighters. The combatants were encouraged to use their environment to their advantage, so being too close to the fight was just asking for trouble. Suitably competitive fighters wouldn't hesitate to bowl over anyone who happened to get in their way. Naruto winced in remembrance of when he was used as a shield by Ino when she had fought Sakura 2 classes previous. He didn't quite know where the instructors got off telling the girl she needed more punching power. Naruto bounced on the balls of his feet as the crowd of students backed up. Guy's lessons about having an explosive first step sounded loudly through his mind. The initiative could decide the outcome of a fight better than any level of skill. Most shinobi fights didn't last long enough for true skill to shine through. Iruka signaled the start of the fight. Naruto sprang forward, hoping to steal the initiative. His right leg shot out in a near-perfect mid-air roundhouse kick. He hit nothing but air as Sasuke ducked under the strike. The raven-haired boy didn't wait for Naruto to recover, snapping a quick kick at Naruto's chest from his low position. The blonde blocked with both arms crossed, but winced lightly as the kick connected. Sasuke wasn't much bigger than him, but he hit hard. Doesn't matter, Naruto thought fiercely. His landing was less graceful than he would have liked, but he regained his footing nonetheless. It wasn't a moment too soon, as Naruto moved his face to the left to avoid Sasuke's fist. The displaced air whispered across his skin as he moved inside the Uchiha's guard, snapping off a backhand fist that connected solidly with Sasuke's face. If the Uchiha was surprised at being hit, he didn't show it. The boy rolled with the punch, and snapped off one of his own that was blocked by Naruto's face. The two separated quickly, Naruto blinking back tears of pain. He glared fiercely at his opponent, though his feeble attempt to turn him to ash failed. Muscles flexed, coiled, and uncoiled as the two boys threw themselves back into the fight, each looking for almost non-existent openings in each other's guard. Naruto, so far, was thoroughly pleased with the encounter. He had held his own quite well. He had watched the Uchiha's fights closely in the past months, and he had managed to develop a thin sort of strategy. The best plans were the flexible ones. His first hope for the fight had been to take the initiative early. That attempt had failed rather easily, and he now had to reevaluate his options. He made a split-second decision. Leaping head first into the fray, Naruto jumped inside the larger boy's guard but, instead of immediately attacking, feinted forward. Sasuke reacted instinctively, bringing his right arm into a textbook guard, but was unprepared for Naruto to grab the offending appendage. From there, life was good for the blonde as he laid 2 heavy haymakers into the Uchiha's face before the raven-haired boy managed to wrench himself from Naruto's grip. Sasuke made to make space, but Naruto wasn't giving up that easily. Charging forward, Naruto made to strike high, but dropped at the last moment and performed a textbook leg sweep. The Uchiha was knocked off his feet, but acquitted himself nicely by landing a solid kick to Naruto's stomach. The raven-haired boy landed an uppercut to Naruto's chin, but received a smack to both ears in return. Naruto, reeling from the blow, shook his head before charging low. The Uchiha was unprepared for the blonde's bum rush maneuver, and had the wind knocked out of him as he hit the ground hard. Naruto, while both smaller and lighter than Sasuke, had unintentionally managed to position himself perfectly on top of his opponent, ensuring that Sasuke couldn't maneuver his body to a certain extent. Leaning forward, he laid into the Uchiha, landing 5 hard punches to the boy's face. Victory was in his sights, as Iruka would surely call the match. Naruto peripherally felt a pair of legs snap around his neck, and blinked in confusion as he saw a victorious snarl cross Sasuke's face. He opened his eyes blearily. The sky is really blue, isn't it? He thought. A scarred face disrupted his view. Nay, Iruka-sensei. You ruined my view, he complained loudly. The sound of laughter assaulted his ears, and he turned his head in order to view his tittering classmates. Get up, Naruto, Iruka demanded. Naruto noticed it wasn't quite as harsh as usual. He brushed it off, it wasn't important. He reluctantly obliged the Chunin, though his body seemed to protest. Loudly. As you were unconscious at the time, you don't know what the class went over after your fight. I suggest you get the notes from one of your classmates, the instructor stated stiffly. Naruto just nodded in acceptance. His memories of the fight were flowing back rather steadily. His only mistake had been leaning too low over Sasuke when he had him pinned. Being too low allowed for one's opponent to apply a leg chokehold. Sasuke had apparently demonstrated this rather well, as Naruto managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. He grimaced as feeling returned to his neck. Blue eyes sought Onyx as Naruto glanced about. He spied Sasuke with an ice pack held to his jaw. He glared balefully at those who attempted to help him. Apparently, he didn't need any help. The newly forming bruises on his face didn't agree. As Naruto caught the clan heir's attention, he nodded, hoping to convey the message good fight through the simple gesture. Surprisingly, Sasuke nodded back. A 12-year-old Naruto sputtered as he spit grass out of his mouth. I guess this is what they mean by eating dirt. It was a rare occurrence, thankfully. The taste of grass and dirt was not one that Naruto wanted to get used to. Unfortunately, his sparring partner had other ideas. Naruto didn't even flinch as he narrowly avoided a chakra-enhanced haymaker. He had enough bruises coming from this fight already. He wasn't about to let Sasuke land a near-cheap shot on his face that easily. The blonde danced out of the way of his sparring partner's follow kick easily. It looked almost choreographed in its simplicity. Footwork changed, stances flowed, and Naruto sprang forward with the force of a cannon, his weight and chakra carefully flowing into his outstretched elbow. Air whistled past his ears and he snarled happily as Sasuke was only able to redirect the blow. The elbow had caught him in the right shoulder, spinning him round. 2 steps and a minor weight adjustment later, Naruto's left-footed roundhouse kick had sent Sasuke hurtling toward a nearby tree. The boy managed to right himself in midair, and landed gracefully. Red eyes regarded Naruto balefully as their owner clutched his chest. Blue eyes narrowed and Naruto sighed inwardly. Sasuke had activated his Sharingan not a full year ago. He had managed to get dragged into testing its limits, as the young Uchiha put it. He could say with full honesty that he hated those eyes. It had been more than difficult to keep up the clan heir before he had activated his Kekkei Genkai. Now it was nearly impossible. His taijutsu superiority had all but disappeared in the last year, his tri-weekly sessions with Guy having little effect overall. That wasn't to say that he wasn't improving. It was just that Sasuke's already high learning curve became even higher. Bloody genius. The Uchiha had made one of the smarter decisions of his life once he had activated the famed dojutsu. He had decided against letting the world know about it. Naruto heartily approved. A shinobi always had his secrets. Just like Naruto would never let Sasuke know that he wore a full set of both leg and arm weights under his long-sleeved clothing. It wouldn't do well to reveal his trump card. Naruto was sure that Sasuke had a few tricks up his short sleeves as well. Naruto absently dodged a high kick to the neck, and moved swiftly under its follow-up. Snapping out a palm, he felt the heel of his hand just miss its target, Sasuke's eyes allowing him to predict the motion before it was complete. The offending appendage was grabbed tightly, but pushed himself forward, rather than back, throwing Sasuke off balance. Panting his feet and reshifting, Naruto used his superior strength to hurl Sasuke over his shoulder. The boy landed just as gracefully as before, however, and Naruto grimaced. A neutral fight was pretty much all he could hope for once Sasuke brought out his eyes. The acclaimed genius might not be fully experienced with the dojutsu, but he learned fast. And those eyes taught on their own. Naruto wasn't about to go full speed at the boy, even with his weights on. They both held back considerably here, either wanted to be injured in a spar that meant nothing. Naruto was similarly reluctant to break out the few ninjutsu he knew. While they might turn the tide in the short term, it would only hurt him in the long term. Sasuke knew a few ninjutsu himself, and there was no doubt that the Sharingan would copy everything Naruto threw at him anyway. Life just wasn't fair sometimes. Though it wasn't fair nearly all the time, in the case of Naruto. As such, he was often left taking a beating from his sparring partner. He consoled himself with the knowledge that he was getting better just as much, even if his progress was that much slower than the prodigal Uchiha's. The two rushed each other at some unspoken signal, and 2 punches were caught with a smack of skin on skin. They separated just as quickly, each one making space. Each dodged the other's punch this time, Naruto by a lesser margin than Sasuke, and the blonde kicked out. 2 shins met in the middle and each boy winced. Leaping back, the two regarded each other with calculating eyes, each assessing the other. Naruto smiled. Well? A10, Sasuke nodded. The two relaxed immediately. Naruto collapsed heavily against a nearby tree. Sasuke joined him moments later. Not bad, in my esteemed opinion at least. Sasuke snorted. If your opinion mattered, the standard Konoha uniform would be entirely orange, and there would be a yearly ramen festival. It's not my fault nobody recognizes what an awesome color orange is. He didn't bother refuting the second part of the statement. Why don't you wear it then? I do wear it, just, not during training, Naruto trailed off lamely. The truth was, orange was a horrible color for shinobi. It had taken Naruto about a full year into his stint at the academy to realize that orange wasn't a practical color for a shinobi. In fact, it was a downright horrible color for a ninja. That was doubly so for a Konoha ninja, given the general greenery of the area. One of Naruto's lesser-known goals was to one day be skilled enough for his color of choice not to matter. Even he knew that that day was far, far in the future. Anyway, back on topic? Naruto began. Humph. The response was almost eloquent in its simplicity. Naruto would forever envy Sasuke's ability to sound cool with such a minimal response. Not that anyone would ever find out. Not bad, I suppose? The hits are harder, more precise. You've gotten faster. The unasked question went unanswered. Every ninja had their tricks. Sasuke would never know about Naruto's leg weights if the blonde had anything to say about it. Naruto nodded seriously, silently appreciating the bluntness of the conversation. Either of them liked to dick around. Thanks. About the same form my end. You've managed to include a few new moves since last time. Getting your techniques stolen was an occupational hazard of training with a Sharingan user. Naruto didn't much mind. He was essentially bastardizing Guy's Goken style as it was. Complaining about his training partner stealing it would be hypocritical. As long as the Uchiha didn't take any of his ninjutsu, few that they were, he was just fine. Guy teach you anything new? Naruto shrugged. I'm working on some things, but nothing's done just yet. It's more internal chakra stuff than anything else. Useful? The thought of Naruto learning a new technique, and then his copying of it, was something of interest to the Uchiha. Maybe. Now Sasuke was really interested. Naruto didn't deflect questions very often. He didn't have the mental capacity or personality, in Sasuke's opinion at least. His dodging of the question spoke volumes about how useful this technique might actually be. Sasuke knew better than to push, though. Naruto would lock up tighter than the Hokage's private ANBU security detail. Good for tomorrow? Naruto asked, trying to move the conversation forward. Sasuke actually laughed, though it was more of a chuckle. Is that a question, idiot? Naruto had the grace to blush. Sasuke was the #1 rookie for a reason. Ah, guess not. Not worried then? Of course not. I'd be more worried about yourself, Dobe. Righteous anger quickly bubbled to the surface. I haven't been dead last for 4 years now, team. Why do you have to call me that? Guess it just stuck. Why do you call me team? Sasuke reflected the question with unearthly skill. It fits. Don't, he exclaimed when Sasuke looked about to interrupt. The boy settled for a vicious smirk. You're a total douche to everyone. Team makes sense. Dead last isn't a great nickname for the #2 in class. The smirk never left the Uchiha's face. Maybe Dobe. Naruto sputtered in indignation. He was ignored. Still, second best is still last in my book. Good thing your book isn't the grade book, then. If those damned written tests didn't mean so much, you'd actually have to work some to keep that one spot. Sasuke got up to make his exit from the training ground, idly wiping the residual dirt from his shorts. As if, Uzumaki. Try not to fail tomorrow. You too, asshole. Naruto flipped him off. Sasuke just snorted. They were friends. Naruto didn't bother to watch as Sasuke disappeared from his sight line. His mind was on other things. More important things. Tomorrow marked the true beginning of his ninja career. He wouldn't be too ashamed to admit that he was more than a little nervous. Not for the graduation test, he was second in his class for a good reason. No, he was nervous because for every step toward skill and power he took, it was one more step toward his enemies. Akatsuki, he thought with hatred, though it wasn't particularly focused. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know what they were after. All he knew was that they were strong enough that Konoha wouldn't be able to protect him for long. Every minute of every hour of every day he had spent training was working toward the eventual confrontation he would have with the organization. He would be ready. Believe it. Chapter 1, Graduation. His body was awake and alert the moment the alarm began to blare. Blue eyes snapped to attention and regarded his room with earnest. The ceiling was still off-white, the wallpaper was peeling off in the appropriate places, and the sun filtered in through the two thin blinds. This was home. Naruto sat up blearily, idly turning off his alarm. Bloody annoyance. The blonde shook his head quickly, shaking out the cobwebs of sleep that had been overridden by his momentary alertness. If there was no immediate threat or interesting action being performed, the body reverted back to what it always was in the morning. Being tired. Naruto hated mornings. He slipped his slippers on as he rose. A pot of water for tea was boiling before he made his way to the bathroom to complete his daily morning routine. One leak and a cup of tea later, his blue eyes had their usual intensity back. They would remain so for the next 16 hours at the least. It was 7 minutes past 7 when Naruto finished his tea. Just enough time to properly dress and make his way to the academy. He pulled on a pair of black pants with a forest green short sleeve top over them. Black shinobi sandals completed his ensemble, along with carefully wrapped bandages along his lower claves and forearms. His ankle weights were carefully concealed beneath his pant legs. His weapons pouches were strapped in their appropriate places. The lights were off and his major appliances had been unplugged as he left his studio apartment. The landlord didn't need any real excuse to charge him more for electricity. A minor application of chakra masked his appearance as he exited his apartment building, and he began to weave his way through the busy morning traffic of Konoha. The brown-haired youth gently pushed his way into one of the many stalls that lined Konoha's streets. It was one of his favorite breakfast haunts. Uzumaki Naruto wasn't allowed. The brown-haired, brown-eyed Kimi-lee had no such problems. He munched on a breakfast roll happily as he bobbed and wove through the thick crowds. A smile crossed his unwhiskered face as he enjoyed the feeling of having no eyes on him. Well, save for the NBU on the rooftops. It was one of his guilty pleasures. There was much happiness to be had simply from not being noticed or glared at by the general populace. It was too bad it didn't last after he removed his minor henge. His arrival at Konoha's Ninja Academy coincided with his finishing of his breakfast roll. He carefully cleaned his hands with a napkin and water from the fountain near the academy's entrance. Ruffling his hair as he approached the classroom, a smirk threatened to split his face. He pushed the door to the room open to be met with the raised voices of the 20 or so students who were already there. All of them seemed to be trying to talk over each other, though he noticed a few nervous souls doing some last-minute studying in the corner. It was graduation, and Uzumaki Naruto was about to arrive. Believe it! It's me, bitches! He announced as he swaggered in. Kiba snorted up top. Chuji snickered around his mouthful of chips. Shikamaru simply laid his head on the desk. He was probably already asleep. Taxing activities like expressions were far too troublesome for the Nara. A little confident in Naruto? Chuji asked good-naturedly. With good reason, mate, Naruto said as he strode up the wooden steps to his seat. He tossed a quick wink to a few tittering girls at the front. His already large smirk became absolutely devilish as they blushed. Take that, Sasuke. Bah! Cocky, that's what you are, Kiba barked from his position. You know full well that Akamaru and me could take you any day. Don't be so sure about that, doggy boy. You'd probably be a handicap for Akamaru over there. At Kiba's growl, Naruto held up a hand. Don't even bother. We all know who wears the pants in your relationship. Ain't that right, Akamaru? The small dog yipped happily in response. Chuji laughed as Kiba grumbled about traitorous partners. Even Shikamura managed a snort. Now that was something of note. Naruto expected the lazy boy to be fast asleep by now. He certainly had no problems with doing so in the past. He and Chuji often talked about how they thought the boy could likely sleep standing up. If it wasn't too troublesome, of course. Chips, Naruto? Chuji asked. The blonde declined politely. Nervous? Eating can take your mind off the test, you know? Nah, mate. Naruto shook his head. The confident smirk had faded. It was replaced by a serious look that seemed out of place on the usually smiling visage. I figure I got to number 2 already. That counts for something. Chuki just shrugged, so Kiba picked up the slack, having finished licking his proverbial wounds. You sure about that? My sister graduated a few years back. She was downright bitchy in the lead up. Said it was the hardest thing she ever studied for. Naruto copied Chuji in his manner of expression. Maybe. It's a 3-parter. Written, ninjutsu, and taijutsu. I've had the ninjutsu down for a couple of years now, and my taijutsu had been top for almost the same. He wasn't bragging, simply stating facts. That's 2 out of 3 right there, and my written tests have gotten better. I figure that I've got this, even if I don't finish top. His own speech seemed to have eased some of the tension among the small group. His casual recounting of his own skills had reminded his contemporaries that they were similarly qualified, if not quite as good. A merry band of misfits they may be, but they weren't incompetent. At least not entirely. The momentary reverie was broken by the sound of squealing. Naruto winced appropriately as the overly loud voices of Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino reached his ears. I'm gonna sit next to him. No, I am, Ino Pig. Fat chance, forehead girl. Cute girls they may be, but it was far too early for their pointless squabbles over the widely coveted seat next to Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto winced in sympathy for the raven-haired boy. He, along with the rest of the male population, was more than a little jealous of the good-looking Uchiha. That didn't mean he wanted to have the twin harpies crowing over him 24/7. The two were rapidly approaching their object of affection, and the boy in question looked none too happy. Naruto decided to take pity on his friend for the moment, and perhaps the girls given the look the boy had on his face, as a brilliant idea struck him. Catching Sasuke's eye, he made 4 hand seals. The boy simply rolled his eyes in irritation. Naruto took that as his cue. Speeding through the seals, Naruto executed a textbook Kawarimi no Jutsu with Sasuke, just as Yamanaka Ino claimed the coveted seat. Ha! Take that, forehead! True love prevails, isn't that right, Sasuke-kun? Naruto struggled to keep a straight face as the blonde girl's triumphant look turned to confusion as she spied Naruto's raised eyebrow. Her head turned around rather comically as she searched for the boy she thought she was sitting next to. She found him. He looked just as he always did, perfectly unruffled from the impromptu Kawarimi. Naruto took that as a show of his own skill, rather than Sasuke's innate coolness. His ego needed to stay inflated somehow. The rousing laughter from Kiba and Chuji, combined with Sasuke's twitching mouth, connected the dots in the minds of the two kunoichi. Ino opened her mouth to lambaste Naruto, but was cut off by the entrance of Naruto's 2 least favorite people. Everyone sit down and shut up! Yumino Irika yelled. Ino had no choice but to sit in the vacant seat next to Naruto, while Sakura took a seat next to a quivering Hyuga Hinata. This is the graduation exam. Take it seriously, were the words of wisdom from the scarred academy teacher. His silver-haired assistant Tuji Mizuki silently passed out the written portion of the exam. Naruto ignored the scowl that crossed the man's face as he received his test. The animosity between himself and the academy instructors hadn't waned in the last years of Naruto's academy stint. Irika had seemed to warm to him for a time, but Naruto had remained wary of the man. If he had befriended every person who was suddenly nice to him, he wouldn't be here now. The somewhat half-hearted attempts at friendship with the scarred man had all but disappeared. You have 1 hour. Begin. The scarred instructor's voice barely penetrated Naruto's thoughts. He opened his test and silently regarded the 45 questions. He sighed. I hate tests. Question 1. The following 256-character message needs to be decoded. Determine the cipher necessary and explain its concept. Naruto's mind filtered through the various ciphers he knew of before deciding on one. It was correct. He had gone with the most basic one he knew. It was one of the 3 that were taught at the academy. The fact that he had memorized over 10 more on his own time spoke of his dedication to the shinobi lifestyle. Question 2. The position of Shinobi marked A in relation to the position of Shinobi marked B is defined by the following equation. Derive the velocity and acceleration functions from the position function as related to time. Fucking math. He hated math. It was tedious, boring, and nearly useless in the practical sense. When would he ever have to derive equations in the field? Never, that's when. Thankfully, he had a little shortcut, courtesy of the archive. N times A times T to the N1, bitches. Who needs math? Question 3. Given the derived equations, calculate the instantaneous velocity and acceleration at time equals 2.7 seconds of a thrown shuriken from Shinobi A to Shinobi B. A simple plug-and-chug problem. They were easy as long as you had the equations right. Living on easy street, he thought with a grin. Question 4. Given the height of Shinobi A and the distance between him and Shinobi B, draw the appropriate parabola describing the projectile motion of a thrown shuriken from Shinobi A to Shinobi B. Calculate the angle of depression and the angle of elevation. Shit, he couldn't do this one. He vaguely remembered Iraka's lectures on projectile motion, but only vaguely. Mizuki must have been the one to finish up that particular lesson. There was a reason he was the assistant. Question 5. Describe the effect Konohakusa relations had on the outbreak of the Third Secret War. Utilize the space below and summarize in less than 200 words. History. It was boring as hell, but pretty easy. All it was memorizing dates and names. It had no real importance in the field though. Naruto supposed that it might be important to know if one was in the administrative service. It was important to learn from history. At least that was what the proverb said. And the questions continued on in that vein. By the end of the hour, Naruto had answered all but 8 of the questions on the test. The more practical questions were fairly easy for the blonde, while the math and written physics were the opposite. History was somewhere in the middle. He exchanged nods with a bored-looking Sasuke and even more bored-looking Shikamaru as the tests were collected. The Taijutsu portion of the exam was next, and he was eager to see how much Sasuke would reveal. They were both better than they let show in class. There was simply no need to show off more than they already did. What did you think? He asked the group of Shikamaru, Chuji, and Kiba. Sasuke was slightly ahead of them and unlikely to participate in the conversation. He was Naruto's friend, not everyone else's. Not too bad, troublesome, and piece of cake, were the answers that greeted Naruto. It was all he really expected from his academy friends. None of them excelled at written tests, and, as such, didn't hold them in much regard. Save for Shikamaru, whose mind was likely on what he would do after the exam, they all were focused on the coming Taijutsu portion of the exam. All the graduates will fight me in a one-on-one spar until I or Iraka deem that we have seen enough. You guys know the drill. The silver-haired man's boredom was evident in his voice. He attempted to smile to lighten some of the tension hovering over the group, but it came out as a grimace. Don't hold back and good luck. Don't hold back and good luck, Mizuki stated for what must have been the 30th time since the spars had begun. It had begun to wear on Naruto. That, and the general level of incompetency he saw clearly in his fellow students. He could only imagine how Iraka and Mizuki felt, having taught the bunch. His clique had done well, though. That was a good thing at least. Kiba had been downright vicious. The blonde watched dispassionately as Sasuke danced around Mizuki's strikes. His fan club was cheering him from the sidelines. Not for the first time did Naruto envy the prodigy's inherent grace. No matter how much he worked or trained, he knew that Sasuke would always look better than him when fighting hand to hand. Grace couldn't be taught. Bastard. His eyes didn't change as he watched Sasuke take the upper hand with a well-placed thrust kick that had Mizuki stumbling. Iraka could have called the match right there. Mizuki was finished, but he allowed Sasuke to show off his skills. He snorted when Sasuke planted his knee in the man's gut to end the match. Mizuki looked none too happy with his partner. Naruto exchanged nods with the genius as he made his way to the ring. Sasuke hadn't shown much more than he ever did in the academy spars. Naruto would do the same. It wasn't that he had anything to hide, really, but going all out wasn't really necessary. Iraka and Mizuki were total scrubs when it came to taijutsu as far as he knew. It made him wonder why they were teaching. Don't hold back and good luck. The platitude couldn't have been less sincere if Naruto had been the rakeage. Begin! Naruto hopped forward immediately, launching a hard roundhouse kick at Mizuki's head. It was blocked, though Naruto got satisfaction from the man's wince. The added weight around his ankles hadn't helped matters. Grunting, he shifted his weight while midair, bringing his other leg around for a dropping heel. Mizuki dove under the leg and rolled to safety. Naruto landed gracefully and bounced on his toes in anticipation. Mizuki didn't disappoint. Naruto calmly redirected a palm strike to his throat and ducked inside the man's guard and swung a punch. It connected solidly, but Mizuki rolled with the blow and Naruto added another bruise to his collection from a kick to his right arm. It was all good though. Mizuki didn't hit nearly as hard as Lee. Naruto leaped over a wide sweeping kick and coiled his body into a controlled haymaker. Coil and uncoil. Let the body's weight and flexibility be your power. The haymaker hit home with a thump and Naruto followed up with a quick sweep of the man's legs. He caught the defensive kick aimed at his chin and used the momentum to turn the catch into a throw. Mizuki landed heavily in the dust, but regained his bearings quickly. Naruto scowled as he fought the instinct to follow up with a Konoha Senpa that would have laid the instructor out. It wasn't necessary for this fight, he told himself. The blonde wondered why the match hadn't been called yet. Surely he had made a good show so far. A quick glance to Irika showed a calculating look in the man's eyes. Naruto smirked a little. He was obviously letting this play out like he had with the previous match. It was probably to see how much Naruto actually knew. The thought was broken up as he took a punch to the face. He cursed his inattention. Sasuke wouldn't have done that. Mizuki came in low with a stomach-level punch. Naruto worked in some Tai Chi transferring body weight. The blonde redirected all of Mizuki's momentum away from him. The man was stumbling as inertia took over. The instructor didn't know what hit him as Naruto capitalized on his opportunity and buried his foot in his back. The boy took more than a little satisfaction in forcing his teacher to eat dirt. Match. Irika called. The man looked genuinely impressed. It was one thing to knock your classmates around in the spars. It was something else to do it to your instructor. Even so, Mizuki likely wasn't going all out. Naruto did his best to remain humble in the face of overwhelming victory. It was easier said than done as a smirk threatened to split his face. Yamanaka Ino was called as Naruto exited the ring to polite clapping from the rest of the class. Sasuke was smirking. Kiba was howling. Chuji looked happy. Shikamaru looked bored. How about that, Sasuke-chan? He asked with a teasing smirk. Humph. Not bad, Dobe, but you took a few too many shots to the head. I'd worry about your intelligence if you weren't already so stupid. Naruto just laughed. Whatever, bastard. I beat your time all the same. The boy in question turned his head. I still look better doing it, idiot. Bah. The rest of the group watched the banter with varying degrees of amusement. It was well known that Naruto was pretty much the only one that Sasuke got along with, and that their verbal spars had no real heat behind them. The barb tossing simply served as amusement for the rest of them. The group chatted back and forth as Ino finished her match with Mizuki. Naruto smirked as he annoyed the blonde girl by cheering for her obnoxiously. She scowled at him venomously, looking at him like he was something to be wiped off her sandal. It was fun to rile her up. Naruto calmly accepted a bag of chips from Chuji as the group of hopefuls was led back into the academy. All that remained was the ninjutsu test. Naruto wasn't worried. They were immediately told to sit down and prepare for the final third of the exam. Apparently the examiners wanted to get this over with. This was the normal time to break for lunch. Chuji was distraught. Troublesome, listen, Chuji. Your name's at the top of the call sheet. Get it done quick and get out of here for some food, Shikamaru suggested to his friend. Naruto watched with amusement as the large boy's eyes lit with renewed determination. Chuji was too easy to manipulate. The shadow user was particularly adept at it. The two had known each other since birth, nearly, and Shikamaru knew Chuji nearly as well as he knew himself. Naruto tapped his fingers against the wooden desk as he waited to be called. The ninjutsu test was the most important of the three, and Naruto was eager to get it over with. He was far from nervous. He had mastered each of the 3 academy jutsu a few years back. All that he cared about at this point were class placements. That and getting the fuck out of the academy. He was sick of the entire establishment. Satisfaction welled up inside him every time he remembered his time at the academy. His Chunin oppressors had tried their level best to discourage his learning for years. They had failed. Everything short of outright sabotage had been tried, including not answering his questions and sending him outside for disrupting the class. It didn't matter. They kicked him out, he learned on his own. They eventually stopped trying. It wasn't worth the effort apparently, especially as he managed to take the 2 spot in the rankings over 2 years ago. It had been a long, hard, and tedious 5 years, but he had made it. Uzumaki Naruto, Iruka called. And now he was just a few hand seals away from victory. Let's get his over with. Transform into a copy of a person of your choosing, the scarred instructor commanded. Naruto made 3 hand seals. He was replaced with the neutral visage and form of the Sandaime Hokage. Iruka marched around him for a few moments to inspect the image. His technique was perfect. It had been since he had mastered it all those years ago. Very good, Naruto. Replace yourself with that chair to your left, if you will. The man gestured to the aforementioned object. Naruto sped through the 5 hand seals with little effort. A chair stood in his place not a second later. Iruka looked impressed. There hadn't been any smoke or noise to accompany the technique. He had passed it off as a fluke when it had happened with the henge, but it appeared that Naruto had mastered the academy jutsu to a higher level than his classmates. Iruka nodded at Naruto's raised eyebrow. And the Bunshin no Jutsu. Produced 3. Naruto made 5 seals and carefully regulated his chakra. 3 perfect clones shimmered to life next to him, and Naruto couldn't contain his elation. Yada! The clone technique had been his worst by far. That had lasted until he had stumbled upon the mysterious and frustrating concept of chakra control. 2 months, 3 trees, and an endless amount of leaves later, Naruto had mastered the Bunshin. Iruka couldn't help his smile at the boy's enthusiasm. Congratulations, Naruto, you are now an official shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato. Take your headband to the right and check by the administration office for your required paperwork. May you burn with the will of fire. Well, Naruto, I suppose things do turn out well in the end sometimes. Would you agree? The blonde nodded. His electric blue eyes sparkled in the lantern-lit atmosphere of Ichiraku Ramen. Sometimes, old man, sometimes, he trailed off with a smile. He could scarcely remember being so giddy. Surpassing all expectations of you had a way of doing that. Well, I'd offer you a free bowl, but I'm afraid that business hasn't quite been as good since I lost my best customer. The old man had a slight smile on his face as he said it. Naruto didn't believe the kind old man for a second. Please, old man, you know full well that you've been doing just fine. Ayam-chan said you might be planning an expansion, Naruto said with a smirk. Bah! What have I told you about letting slip confidential information? The man called back to the kitchen area. The smile never left his face. It's Naruto, Dad. Besides, you weren't going to keep it secret for long. The voice of Ichiraku Ayam floated upon the ramen-scented air from the kitchen. It held a teasing lilt to it. Humph, I sense a conspiracy here. Naruto laughed along with the small family. It was amazing how 2 people and a steaming bowl of ramen could make him feel right at home. He couldn't imagine another place he would rather be to celebrate his graduation. I don't worry about it, old man. I won't tell no one. He slurped his ramen happily. Sides, weren't you the one who told me that I needed a more balanced diet? If I had known that I'd all but lose my best customer, I would have lived with you being a shrimp. Naruto snorted. The kind old man and his daughter had been his first friends in the village. It was quite the experience for young Naruto to know that someone actually cared about his well-being outside of the very basics. The old man had all but insisted that he move to a more balanced diet when he entered the ninja academy. Ramen's a great food, best in the world, but a growing boy needs some things that ramen just doesn't have, he had said. Regardless, Naruto still made a point to stop by and order a bowl or 3 once a week. He would have happily lived on ramen alone if it meant keeping the atmosphere and attitude that the Ichirakus provided. It was too bad that his sense of survival all but demanded his compliance with the old man's order for a more rounded diet. He wouldn't survive long if he was malnourished. It's good to know that my well-being is at the front of your mind, Tuchi-san. So, what's this expansion you're planning? Naruto asked. He was genuinely curious. Ichiraku Tuchi took a seat next to the blonde. Well, you probably don't know, but a few of my friends in the business have fallen on some hard times lately. They had to close down their stalls recently, and I came up with the idea of a joint business venture. While it would still be under my name, the 3 of us would co-own the shop/restaurant, and it would cater to all 3 meals of the day. A roll shop for breakfast, ramen for lunch, and grilled meats for dinner. It's the full package. The man was very excited at the idea of finally developing his stall into a full-time restaurant. Naruto was happy for the man. It was tough for the two Ichirakus to support themselves with a simple ramen stand. A full-blown restaurant would likely triple their income. Sounds like a good idea to me, old man. When do you start remodeling? In about a month. I've filled out the paperwork for the lease on the building across the way, and we'll begin setting up shop once it's been filed, he proclaimed. Well, good luck to you. Naruto was happy for the two people who he considered family, but he was also sad to lose the homey stand that had served as his hangout and thinking place for the entirety of his childhood. The bell to the stall rang. Tucci was behind the counter before Naruto even noticed he had left his spot. Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen. How may I help you? One bowl of pork ramen. Medium please, a familiar voice ordered. Coming right up, Iruka-san. Naruto's eyes snapped to meet the brown orbs of his sensei. Former sensei, he reminded himself. Iruka-sensei? He kept the honorific as it sounded weird to address him casually. Naruto, I thought I might find you here. The scarred man addressed his former pupil casually. Naruto caught an undertone of hesitation in the man's voice. The Chunin sighed before a small smile blossomed. I want to congratulate you again on passing the exam. You did much better than many had expected. Myself included. Naruto thanked the man. And don't worry, the paperwork will be filled out by end of day tomorrow. But I think that simple congrats wouldn't warrant a visit like this. Naruto was immediately suspicious of the man when he had first entered the stand. Iruka was silent for a few moments as he slurped his ramen. You're right, of course. A simple congratulations wouldn't require me to seek you out. He sighed, looking somewhat lost. Naruto wondered what could cause this side of his sensei to show itself. I wanted to apologize. That stopped Naruto in his tracks. So shocked he was, that he didn't even bother to respond to the unexpected proclamation. Iruka picked up where he left off. I know that I treated you like crap when you first came to the academy. Hell, I didn't treat you much better afterwards, but I suppose I saw you as a bit of a younger version of myself. Here the Chunin smiled lightly. I was quite the little troublemaker myself, you know. Through the haze of confusion the unexpected apology brought on, the last sentence penetrated Naruto's consciousness. No way! He could hardly believe that Iruka, the stickler for the rules, had been anything but a model student when he was younger. Believe it, the man stated, imitating one of Naruto's favorite lines. Anyway, I suppose that led me to being harder on you than the others. It doesn't make up for my behavior, but I hope that this will help make up some ground between us. I like to keep a good relationship with all my students, and I would be remiss if there was bad blood between us. Naruto was stunned. Of all the things he had expected of his former teacher, an apology certainly wasn't one of them. While he held no love for one of his former oppressors, he didn't hate him either. He had overcome any and all efforts the man had made to hinder him. The academy was behind him now, and the man seemed sincerely sorry. Maybe it was time to bury the hatchet. If not, he would just keep an eye on the man. The blonde smiled. Apology accepted. The man seemed surprised. That's it? He asked. Naruto shrugged in response. The academy's behind me now. Everything that happened there is water under the bridge, I guess. A genuine smile lit up the scarred man's face. That's good to hear, Naruto. Heh. Anyway, I'll probably be running missions with you in a few months. No sense in not being able to work with a future teammate. The blonde smirked widely. Iruka guffawed into his bowl of noodles. Humility isn't one of your strong points, is it? What makes you so sure you'll be a Chunin in a few months? I thought that was obvious, Iruka-sensei. I'm awesome like that. The Chunin held back from cuffing the boy over the head. You'd do well to curb that ego of yours. You might be good for a genin, but you've got a ways to go before you're Chunin material. Bah! You know I'm awesome, Iruka-sensei. I totally destroyed Mizuki-sensei today. Iruka snickered at the boy's enthusiasm. He had indeed witnessed the rout, and had been more than a little impressed with the boy's skill. Still, Naruto, Mizuki was holding back against all of you. I'm sure that your match would have gone quite differently if he had been really trying. If only you knew, Naruto thought. Maybe? The boy shrugged childishly. Maybe nothing. Mizuki is a battle-tested Chunin with experience that you just don't have. As am I, he added as more of an afterthought. Naruto accepted the point. He already knew that he was far from strong enough to achieve his goal. Some sound advice from a senior officer wasn't unwelcome. Yeah, I hear you, Naruto conceded. I still kicked his ass today. Irika snorted. You made a good showing, as did your sparring partner. Naruto raised an eyebrow. How did Irika know that he and Sasuke trained together? At his questioning look, the man elaborated. Please, Naruto, did you think that the top two rookies training together wouldn't gather any notice? Give people some credit. Huh. Guess we underestimated you guys. Naruto was surprised that the Chunin had found out about his training schedule. He and Sasuke, while not being overly secretive about their training, had kept it fairly close to the vest. Take a lesson from it, Irika commanded. Always overestimate people. It doesn't matter if they're your enemies or friends. Naruto nodded once, crisply, at the advice. Any response the boy might have had was cut off by the appearance of another Chunin. He looked haggard and more than a little ruffled to Naruto. Irika-san, the Hokage has ordered all active duty Chunin to report to him immediately. Calm down, Komugi, Irika ordered. What happened? The forbidden scroll of seals has been stolen, the man replied. He looked to be on the verge of hyperventilating. Who's the suspect? Naruto asked from his position. The man didn't even glance at him as he answered, Uzumaki Naruto was spotted leaving the administration building 10 minutes ago. Naruto and Irika exchanged a look. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I've been here for over half an hour, Naruto said uncertainly. His mind was trying to wrap itself around the prospect of someone stealing something while disguised as him of all people. The man, Komugi, finally noticed Naruto's presence. He drew a kunai. Stand down, Komugi, Irika bellowed. I can personally vouch for Naruto's innocence here. He's been with me for the last 20 minutes. Naruto barely withheld a sneer of disgust as the Chunin obeyed Irika without a second thought. The man was clearly not thinking straight. Only an idiot would immediately move to attack a person who couldn't be where they were, by the man's own testimony. That kind of split-second decision-making got people killed on missions. How did this guy become a Chunin anyway? We have to report to the Hokage immediately. He needs to know that Naruto's innocent. Naruto nodded curtly. My apartment is on the way. I'll drop in to get some supplies first. Irika looked torn for a moment, but accepted the course of action. Someone had tried to frame Naruto for high treason. It was reasonable for the boy to be prepared for any eventuality in this instance. Make it fast. The blonde slipped a hidden kunai into his hand as he crept up the stairs to his apartment, Irika and Kogmaji behind him. He needn't have been so discreet. The person who had snuck into his apartment certainly hadn't been. Naruto cursed sulfurously as he studied the open door. He pushed the open door inward and walked calmly to his bed. The intruder hadn't made a mess of things, but it was obvious that whoever it was had expected Naruto would be at his apartment. They had likely gone there to kill him before impersonating him. Thankfully, he hadn't been there. He knew he was strong for a genin, but whoever this was had been a professional. The only true evidence of their visit was the open door, a sloppy mistake likely made in frustration. They had managed to sneak into the administrative building and steal a highly guarded artifact. Naruto didn't favor his chances had the person been able to surprise him. He dropped to a knee beside his bed, and pulled up floorboard that had been securely fastened. He quickly strapped his weapons pouches to his legs and hips. His shiny new hitate was tied securely around his forehead. I'm ready. Let's go. The Hokage needs to know the full scope of the situation. Irika was the leader of their makeshift group. The three sped across the rooftops of Konoha at speeds hard to follow. If Irika was surprised that Naruto could keep pace so easily, he didn't show it. Komugi did though. The time passed in a blur for Naruto. He had survived one assassination attempt on his person when he was younger. He had been saved from another one by sheer luck. He couldn't help but feel shaken at the notion as the group came to a halt on the roof of the administration building. The Sandaime was waiting for them. Hokage-sama! Irika burst out. The aged legend took in their forms. His eyes held a calculating gleam as they surveyed Naruto. Save your words, Irika. I believe that I have some idea of the situation we are in, the Hokage said. His gravelly voice was neutral. Naruto couldn't be sure, but he thought the old man looked relieved to see him where he was. I take it you can vouch for Naruto's innocence? Yes, Hokage-sama. Naruto and I were eating at Ichiraku Ramen when the crime occurred. It couldn't have been him. The Ikirakus can verify that. The old man nodded his acceptance. Very well, though that means that our situation is even direr. I scrambled the available Chunin under the notion that they would be tracking a new genin. We now have to assume that a much more capable shinobi has penetrated our defenses. Hokage-sama, Naruto interjected. The infiltrator broke into my apartment while I was at Ichiraku's. It was likely an attempt to dispose of me before the crime was committed. The old eyes seemed to stare through him. Naruto fidgeted nervously before the legend. It had been a while since he had spoken with the Sandaime, and the circumstances were far from cheerful. That is probable. Was there any hard evidence of the break-in? The door was ajar when we entered, Naruto answered with some confusion. Of course there was evidence, why else would they be reporting it? The information gave the Hokage pause for a few moments. When he spoke, his words were certain, though mostly to himself. Then we are dealing with a homegrown threat. No foreign infiltrator would have been so sloppy in their execution, especially if the attack failed to produce results. Nor would they have cause to target young Naruto specifically. Naruto was confused. He knew that many in the village didn't like him, for reasons unknown, but why would anyone have cause to target and frame him specifically? It didn't make sense. The Hokage made 5 hand seals. Unbeknownst to the group, the tattoos of all active ANBU members had just begun to burn. It signaled them to report to headquarters immediately. Hiro Iroh, the Hokage addressed 2 hidden ANBU by name. Report to headquarters and brief the captain of Alpha Platoon on the situation. We have a homegrown traitor who is currently in possession of the Forbidden Scroll of Seals. Yes, Hokage-sama. The 2 ANBU sped off, all but invisible to Naruto's eyes. Iruka, Kamugi, report to the Yamanaka clan compound. Wake Yamanaka Inoichi and brief him on the situation. The first Fireblade has the authority to recall active shinobi. All Chunin currently on duty are to be recalled. ANBU will handle the infiltrator. Yes, Hokage-sama. The Chunin made haste toward the sprawling clan compound, Iruka with a glance back at Naruto. Naruto fidgeted nervously in front of the Sandaime. The old man seemed oblivious to the boy's discomfort. He merely stared at the Hokage monument before him in pensive silence. Naruto said nothing. After what seemed to be an eternity of waiting, the Sandaime sighed. His whole body seemed to shrink as he let out the breath. Walk with me, Naruto. I feel that you are safest in my presence tonight, and I would like to have a cup of tea in my office. It does wonders for an old man's nerves. Naruto was silent as he followed in Sarutobi's wake. The man walked briskly through the corridors of the administration building, and Naruto was hard-pressed to keep up. Eventually, the Sandaime led him to the large, circular office where he spent the majority of his days. He was surprised to see a steaming pot of tea waiting for them when they arrived. Protection of the Hokage involves more than just standing outside my office all day, Naruto, Sarutobi addressed the boy as he poured the tea into 2 waiting mugs. The job requires both combat prowess and some level of domestication. He smiled wryly at the disbelieving expression on the boy's face. Oh yes. Naruto burst out laughing. The image of the Hokage's elite guards making his tea was just too funny an image. Indeed, many of the newer recruits are quite surprised when their senior officers send them on errands for me. I believe the senior members consider it some form of hazing. The Hokage kept his smile all the while, sipping his tea absently. It was difficult for Naruto to reconcile the image of this grandfatherly figure with the information he knew of the man. It had been that way ever since the blonde had read of his exploits in the First and Second Shinobi Wars. The idea that this man, currently laughing with him, was known as the Shinobi no Kami was hard to wrap one's mind around. It's quite the image, old man. Naruto accidentally referred to the man as he used to and was about to apologize, but Sandaime just chuckled good-naturedly. Yes it is, Naruto-kun. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what this is all about. The abrupt change of topic threw Naruto for a second. Yes, Hokage-sama, I am. He recognized the change in tone, and reverted to a more formal approach. Walk with me then. Once more, Naruto followed the sweeping white robes of the professor through the administration building. They came to a halt outside a locked door with an inscribed pattern on the aged wood. Sarutobi made a few seals before his fingers lit up in a specific pattern. Naruto watched, entranced by the visible chakra, as the Hokage pushed his fingertips to the pattern on the door. The pattern, now identified as a seal of some sort, lit up in a blinding flash of blue. The doors swung open obediently, revealing numerous shelves almost twice the size of Naruto. This, Naruto, is the Hokage's library. Naruto's eyes lit up at the prospect of being in the super-secret library that was reserved for the Hokages only. Maybe I could swipe something, he thought excitedly. There was no telling what kind of techniques were in here. Now, before you entertain notions of taking some jutsu scrolls, know that the seal on the door acts as more than a lock. The stern look on Sarutobi's face removed any thought of stealing a technique that Naruto had but a moment before. The old man hadn't said what would happen if Naruto had tried to leave with a scroll, but then he didn't have to. Every Hokage since the Shodai has contributed to this vast library, more than any other. He wasn't called the professor for nothing, it seemed. Naruto lost sight of the man as he disappeared behind a vast shelf. One can find anything from personal ninjutsu, to notes on the wars of the time, to the forbidden scroll of seals, he finished while retrieving a large scroll from the back of the room. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief as he saw the supposedly stolen scroll. But I thought, how? He sputtered. The wry smile returned. You didn't really think that I left priceless information just lying around? I'm afraid that the scroll the thief has is but a decoy. Then why the ANBU? Naruto asked. Attempting to steal this scroll is still high treason, Naruto-kun, regardless of the result. That, and the decoy has some formidable defenses of its own. It would take some skill to bypass them with little detection. I'd rather trust the thief to my ANBU, rather than a group of chunin, half of which are still half asleep. The Hokage's argument was sound and logical. Why am I here, Hokage-sama? He finally blurted out. He had nothing else to say. Aside from the protection issue, which was nicely resolved due to the old man's presence, he had no reason to be staring at the real forbidden scroll. The Hokage sighed heavily. That, Naruto-kun, is what I'm getting to. He unfurled the large scroll. Naruto's sharp eyes briefly viewed a few of the earlier techniques in the scroll before Sarutobi channeled some chakra into the paper, and they disappeared. They were replaced by 4 complex designs. The 4 inscriptions, Naruto thought they might be seals of some sort, had various scribbled notes next to them. To the right of the separate designs was another, more complex one. To Naruto's untrained eyes, it looked like a combination of the first 3. What are they? He breathed. He crouched down to better view the scribbles. His brain was attempting to read the notes adjacent to the designs with little success. It looked like they were written in a hurry. He vaguely made out the words demon, chakra, and seal. They are seals, Naruto-kun, Sarutobi answered from above his crouched form. On the right is the Hak no Fuin Shiki. The one on the left is the Shiki Fujin. In the middle is the Shursho they make this one. A finger entered Naruto's vision, pointing at the 4th seal. What do they do? Naruto's interest was piqued. There had to be a reason for the Sannin to show him this. They seal chakra in various ways. Each way is specific. The Hak no Fuin Shiki and the Shursho Fuin lock away and can regulate chakra. Together they make the 8 trigam sealing style. He smiled thinly at Naruto's confusion. While you don't have to know the particulars, though it might aid you in the future to learn them, just know that the 8 trigram style is capable of sealing away truly massive amounts of chakra. Naruto nodded and turned back to the indecipherable notes. The 3rd seal, the Shiki Fujin, summons the death god. Naruto's head snapped up in shock. Sarutobi nodded grimly. Oh yes. You now understand why this scroll is so important. Such information would not be beneficial to Konoha in the hands of another village. No shit. In any event, the Shiki Fujin is a contract with the Shinigami. One can tear the chakra, soul, or both, from any person or anything the user so chooses. At the price of their own soul, of course. Naruto was in shock. He had no idea that there were techniques that were that powerful. A contract with the Shinigami of all things. He made a note to look into Fuinjutsu at some point in his life. The details, of course, made this meeting even more confusing to the boy. That's awesome and all, Hokage-sama, but why are you telling me this? It had to be important. Information like this didn't get entrusted to Genin for no reason. Naruto knew he was pretty good, but this stuff was just ridiculous. He had managed to piece together from the notes that these 3 things could seal chakra amounts on the level of the 9 Biju. Why would he need to know about something like this? The old man took a seat across from him on the floor. Tell me, Naruto, have you ever seen this design before? He pointed to the final seal. Naruto shook his head. He couldn't remember ever seeing something that complex before. Well then, I suppose it's best to start from the beginning. The legend sighed heavily, and Naruto experienced a feeling of great foreboding. There once appeared a 9-tailed demon fox. A wave of its tail could level a mountain, and a flex of its paw could create a tsunami. To fight the demon, the shinobi were assembled, but only one man could stand against the monster's might. That brave man sealed the demon, but at the cost of his life and soul. Sarutobi's brown eyes bored into Naruto's horrified orbs of blue, his mind jumping to the obvious conclusion before the story was even properly underway. The boy had heard the story enough times to catch the different wording that Sarutobi used. He knew the difference between seal and kill. That man was the Yondaime Hokage. It is important for you all to remember that the life of a shinobi is a hard one, filled with many obstacles. Cherish and hone your skills, but more importantly, cherish each other. Life is short in the field, and you would do well to remember to trust your comrades and friends as much as you do yourselves. Iruka finished his heartfelt speech with a short nod to the room at large. Now, before we move to the team assignments, are there any last questions for your old sensei? He asked good-naturedly to the class. Naruto wasn't quite sure how he managed to put up the facade so easily. That said, he hadn't had so much information dumped on him as Naruto had. Yes, Lee? Iruka asked the girl with a raised hand. Sensei, what happened to Mizuki-sensei? I thought he would be here for the team assignments. Iruka fidgeted nervously for a moment before composing himself. Mizuki was, unfortunately, involved in an incident late last night. Rest assured, he is in good health and being taken care of by some of the finest specialists that Konoha has to offer. Naruto barely withheld a snort. That was the official story that Iruka was supposed to give. Naruto was privy to a few more details than his peers. The so-called specialists Mizuki was being treated by weren't all that interested in his health. Now, on to the team assignments. Naruto tuned out his sensei as he began to announce the various teams. Last night had been both horrifying and fruitful. The knowledge that there was a massive demon sealed within his chakra system wasn't a piece of information that one readily came by. It did explain quite a bit, though. Apparently, the information was distributed on a need-to-know basis. That was why Naruto hadn't known beforehand. Naruto wondered why the whole village needed to know. The Sandaime had said that the information was out before it could be properly contained. The apology didn't make up for the years of isolation, but at least Naruto now had a reason to cling to. It was surprisingly uplifting, knowing why a village full of people hated him, rather than just speculation. His opinion of the village as a whole had dropped tremendously. The way they viewed him was like thinking that the bowl for the ramen and the ramen were the same thing. It was ridiculous. He had wanted to know more, like why he was chosen, but they had been interrupted by the apprehending of the traitor Mizuki. He had been dismissed with a standing invitation to come and talk to the Hokage about the situation whenever he so chose. It was a generous offer. He would save it for later, when he had more questions. The rest of his night had been spent upon the head of the Yondaime, his idol. It was difficult to think of the man as anything but his vision of the hero was clouding with anger. Why had it been him who was chosen? Surely there were others. It wasn't like he could ask the man, though. So Naruto would make do with interrogating the Sandaime once he got his head on straight. And he knew himself well enough to know that it certainly wasn't on straight now. But right now, he had team assignments. His shinobi career still came first. The knowledge of the Kyuubi had only strengthened his resolve to get stronger. He now had a reason for why the shadowy Akatsuki might be after him. It made no difference, though. When they came for him, he would be ready. Team 7, Iruka called. Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, Nara Shikamaru, led by Jonin Hatake Kakashi. Even in his subdued state, Naruto spared a smirk at the twitching Sasuke and groaning Shikamaru. He didn't bother to look toward the squealing Sakura. Team 8, Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata, Akimichi Chuji, led by Jonin Yuhikurinai. Was Naruto seeing things, or did Iruka just blush at the name of the Jonin? Team 9 is still in circulation from last year, so, Team 10, Inuzuka Kiba, Yamanaka Ino, Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka locked eyes with the blonde boy and nodded. Naruto nodded back. Led by Jonin Sarutobi Asuma. Naruto leaned back as he glanced at his two teammates. Kiba looked happy with the selection. Ino was scowling at a smirking Sakura. They would do. Even if they didn't, they wouldn't slow Naruto down. That was a certainty. You are now all shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato. I wish you luck and may you burn with the will of fire. Chapter 2, Team 10. New look, Naruto? The boy in question just shrugged as he sat on the bench that was to serve as their meeting place. Team 10 was meeting for the first time today. At least in full. I guess. Kiba snorted at the answer. That bastard Sasuke must be rubbing off on you. He drew a chuckle from the blonde. The blonde laughed louder when a fist met Kiba's head with a smack. Don't talk about Sasuke-kun like that, Kiba. The boy was left rubbing his head in pain as Akamaru growled at the girl from his position in the boy's lap. It wasn't all that menacing. The fact that any of them could throw the dog with one hand lessened the effect. I know, it's too early to be so loud, Naruto complained. He still wasn't fully awake yet. The filing of his paperwork had lulled the normally alert boy back into his normal morning state of mind. If the Hokage had to file that kind of crap on a daily basis, he wondered why he had ever wanted the job. It just wasn't worth it. Pfft, you sound like that lazy-ass Shikamaru. That's not gonna fly. The girl had her hands on her hips in front of the two boys. She glared almost menacingly. Now that we're a team, you lazy asses are gonna have to step it up. Forehead girls on Sasuke-kun's team, and I'll be damned if I let her win just because of that. The girl was on a roll, but Naruto couldn't quite grasp her thought process. It was all one big jumble. Ino? How does our laziness translate to you losing, whatever it is you might lose? He asked, genuinely perplexed. Kiba seemed to share his confusion, as the boy blinked incoherently while rubbing his head. Sasuke-kun, idiot! Sakura is in prime position to get his attention by being on his team, Ino said in a voice that clearly indicated that the point was obvious. That means that I'm gonna have to work twice as hard to get him as before. That means that you two slackers are gonna have to pull your own weight. Kiba had regained his wits. What little of them he had to begin with. All-around nice guy he might be, but he wasn't the sharpest. So we have to not slack off so that you can beat Sakura? Naruto was still confused as well. The girl made no sense. Exactly. I'm gonna have to be twice as strong, beautiful, and amazing than I am now if I want to get Sasuke. You two can help with the last two, but I'm not gonna be dragged down in training by you two idiots, so get it together. Naruto quickly shushed Kiba. This could work to his advantage, and he wouldn't let the Inuzuka spoil it by being his usual loudmouth self. So you need us to help you get stronger so that you can get Sasuke's attention? Yes. She seemed so pleased that he had finally gotten the point. Well, that shouldn't be a problem. I need to get strong enough to kick that bastard's ass anyways. Naruto smirked lightly at the girl's outraged expression at his term for the Uchiha. You've got a deal, Ino. Unless Kiba's got a problem? Eyes shifted to the dog Ninja. He snarled. As if I'd let you get ahead of me, Naruto. By the time we're done, you'll be having to contend with me and that prick. So we're all in agreement, Naruto said before Ino could castrate Kiba. The two nodded distractedly. Both were glaring daggers at each other. Naruto barely kept the victorious smirk from his face. Motivation had been his sole concern coming into this team as well. Ino had spent most of her academy time competing with Sakura in various childish pursuits, not the least of which was Sasuke. Kiba had been a slacker nearly on the level of Shikamaru. He wasn't about to be held back by either of them anyway, but having them properly motivated would be infinitely easier. Who knew Ino's stupid crush could be so useful? He did take offense to being called a slacker, however. He wasn't quite sure where she got off referring to him as such. Did his place as second in the class mean nothing to the girl? Honestly, he got no respect. The girl in question plopped herself down in the space between him and Kiba. She smiled sweetly. So, now that we're all a team, we should get to know each other, she declared. Naruto wondered at her mood shifts. One moment she was trying to intimidate the two of them into not slacking off, the next she was downright pleasant. Girls, he thought with exasperation. So troublesome, he mimicked his Nara friend. Well, that sounds like a good idea, a new voice piped up. The smell of cigarettes assaulted their collective nostrils, and their eyes watered as smoke was blown in their faces. A big man clad in a standard Jonin uniform stood in front of Team 10. The only item out of the ordinary on the Jonin was a white sash that hung at his waist. I'll go first. I'm Sarutobi Asuma, and I'm in charge of Team 10 from now on. Asuma smirked amidst the coughs. I'm going to be tough on you lot, so get ready. What did you do that for? Kiba asked indignantly. Naruto winced in sympathy for the boy. His heightened sense of smell would have made the entrance nearly unbearable. That stings. The large man laughed. He was one of the biggest men Naruto had ever seen. Most shinobi were more compact. Didn't I just say that I was going to be tough? Don't start crying on me already. I might just fail you here. Naruto's attention was grabbed. Fail? What did you mean? Asuma just laughed some more. Oh, that's right, they don't tell you guys that sort of stuff. We'll get to that later though. Now, introductions. He blew smoke in their faces again, but Naruto shielded himself with a hand. How about you first? He pointed to Ino. She coughed. My name's Yamanaka Ino, she squeaked out. She coughed again. That's it? Sarutobi questioned. What about likes, dislikes, dreams for the future? We're teammates now, you have to share that kind of information. Naruto noted that the man hadn't bothered to reveal his likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future. His interest was piqued. The man was shrewder than he let on. Ino huffed. I like origami, tending flowers, and Sasuke-kun, of course. I hate loud idiots and lazy idiots. The girl sent a pointed look at Kiba. I also hate Sakura. My dreams for the future are to be a strong ninja like my dad, and to land Sasuke-kun. Naruto barely withheld a snort. Sasuke would be thrilled to know that his fangirls treated him like an object. It'd make his day. Well, that's nice. How about you, with the dog? Asuma did his best to look interested. Naruto sympathized with him. Kiba straightened himself. The name's Inuzuka Kiba. I like Akamaru here, my family, hot home-cooked meals, and hotter girls. Asuma nodded in appreciation of the last point, while Ino scowled. I dislike bad smells, people I can't beat up, and arrogant assholes. Ino's scowl morphed into a glare at him for his indirect reference to Sasuke. Naruto wondered what it said about the girl that she automatically connected a reference to assholes to Sasuke. Even then, she was still obsessed with him. My dreams for the future are to lead my clan and prove that the Inuzuka are just as good as everyone else. Asuma nodded in acceptance of the introduction. And the last? Naruto straightened. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. I like training, ramen, and my old sensei. I dislike idiots and laziness. My dream, my goal, is to someday be able to contend with S-rank shinobi, he finished with his head held high. Blue eyes bore into brown as he dared his sensei to mock his proclamation. Asuma's eyes were appraising as he observed Naruto. A lofty goal, but something to strive for, I suppose? His eyes shifted to take in the entire team. He smiled once more, blowing smoke into the faces of the three genin again. The smile widened as they all covered their faces, having anticipated the move. They were learning. Well then, this is the time when most sensei give a test of some sort, in order to judge whether their genin are ready to actually be genin. Kiba looked confused, Ino scared, and Naruto determined. That's right, Asuma continued. You're not officially genin until you pass your sensei's test. But we passed the academy test, Ino exclaimed. Her indignation was matched by her teammates. Their sensei nodded. You did, but did you really think that all your classmates became genin? Even the ones with little to no practical skills? The bearded jonin shook his head. Only 2/3 of the graduates actually make genin, in most cases. Sometimes there is an exceptional class where more pass, but not often. The failed genin return to the reserve academy, where they are put through an accelerated program that churns out capable, if not exceptional ninja. Asuma leaned against a nearby tree as he explained his position. In any event, that's where the sensei's test comes in. The jonin smirked at the expressions on his students' faces. They all looked horrified of failing. I'm a bit different from most jonin in this case. I don't believe that a test, no matter how complex and tested, can really determine how effective a group of genin can be. You guys have too much depth for something so simple to work, he said. So, as of now, you're all on probation. Naruto raised both eyebrows in question. What the hell did probation mean? That means that you'll function as a standard 3-man cell for the time period of 1 month. We'll train together, take missions, and do everything else expected of a 3-man cell, the smoker elaborated. At the end of 1 month, I'll decide whether you all pass or fail. I suggest you learn to work together. It's an all-or-nothing affair. If one of you fails, everyone does. But that's not fair, Naruto burst out. He was already entertaining the nightmare of being held back. Motivation or not, humility or not, Naruto knew that both Kiba and Ino weren't on his level. He had goals to achieve. He had to survive. Being held back couldn't happen. Asuma adopted a serious expression. Life isn't fair, Uzumaki. You ought to learn that. Naruto caught the deeper meaning behind the words. He berated himself mentally. When had his life ever been fair? That truth had made itself even more known a few nights ago. It made no sense that it would start being so now. You're all dismissed for the day, Asuma continued. I understand that some of you have yet to properly file your paperwork. Kiba and Ino winced sheepishly while Naruto straightened in satisfaction. I suggest you go do that. Be at Training Ground 10 at 8 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. The 3 genin waited in anticipation for some other proclamation, but it never came. Instead, Asuma simply walked off, cigarette in mouth. The new genin exchanged looks. An unspoken message was passed. They weren't going to fail, no matter what. Naruto nodded to the other 2, and walked off toward his apartment. He would grab a quick lunch and go out to train. Maybe he would find Guy and Lee if they weren't on a mission. Surely Guy would have some information to give on Sarutobi Asuma. He was halfway to his apartment when a hand on his shoulder stopped him cold. He nearly had a heart attack. He hadn't heard or sensed anyone come up behind him. Asuma chuckled lightly at his student's reaction to his presence. Calm down, Naruto. It's only me. You in the habit of creeping up on people? Naruto asked snidely. Asuma only laughed. He seemed to do that a lot. Sometimes, he answered. He took a drag on his cigarette. Walk with me for a minute. Naruto obliged. A few moments passed before the man spoke again. You're quite the enigma. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Happy as can be most of the time, but you get serious when it counts. You were the dead last in your class for nearly a year during your first year at the academy, but then something changed. You train with Uchiha Sasuke on a regular basis? Naruto was thrown by the sudden question. The man seemed to be in the habit of keeping him off balance. Yes, he answered. He was unaware just how much that told the Jonin about him. Training with the number 1 rookie spoke volumes about his skill that no grades could properly convey. That was doubly so, considering Sasuke's own skill. Asuma nodded. Guy mentioned as much. Naruto's eyes widened. He also said that you train with him and his student Lee on a regular basis. Naruto nodded at the unspoken question. That's interesting. Naruto was confused. He didn't like the feeling. Why are you asking me this? The smoker shrugged. I make it a point to get to know who I'm going to be training. Then why aren't you talking to Ino and Kiba too? Why hadn't he brought this up during the meeting? Who says I'm not? What? Naruto thought. It showed on his face, if Asuma's chuckle was any indication. You're an interesting person, Naruto. I'm just trying to get a read on you. Naruto bobbed his head. It made sense. He supposed that he should be flattered that his sensei would take such an interest in him. It was certainly more than his academy instructors had done. Back on topic, where exactly are you hiding the weights that I know you're wearing? Being a student of Guy, even part-time, means that you probably wear them. The man gestured to Naruto's outfit in question. There weren't many places where he could hide the weights. The boy was wearing a forest green shirt and black shorts that fell to the knee. He had his customary black shinobi sandals, and his legs were taped to the very top of his claves. A black band with a snap button held them in place. Naruto gestured to the bandages on his legs. Resistance seals? They were a graduation present from Guy-sensei. Asuma squinted. He could barely make out the seals inscribed on the bandages, and he was looking for them. He nodded. A good idea. Weights can be cumbersome for someone your age. The seals would allow for Naruto to reap the optimum benefits of weight training by having the seals absorb a fixed amount of chakra from every movement. The chakra would then be reflected back on his bones and muscles, allowing for Naruto's strength to grow as the chakra pushed on the muscles. It was less damaging than the weights that he had been using before, which had been more suited to taijutsu specialists. There was the added benefit of being less cumbersome as well. A chakra flex in the legs disengages them, Naruto told his new sensei. He noticed that they had reached a popular barbecue restaurant. Asuma led him inside. Naruto hoped the man was paying. A good design, the jonin said simply, as the two were led to a table. Naruto noted that no one so much as looked at him funny when he was in the presence of the jonin. It was nice. He wondered if it was because of the man's rank or surname. You can channel chakra to your legs? He asked. Naruto nodded. I had to learn the tree climbing exercise in order to do some less chakra-heavy techniques. It had been a must for him to learn the bunshin. His chakra reserves were far too big for the technique under normal circumstances. Asuma looked surprised. Where did you come by the exercise? It's not common knowledge in academy students. Archive, Naruto said simply as a plate of assorted meats was placed in front of them. They hadn't even ordered. His eyes found Asuma's, and he saw that he was smiling at the waitress. He must have been a regular. Ah, that explains it. Asuma had turned back to his genin. Not enough academy students use that resource. Good on you. He placed the pieces of meat on the grill in front of them. That puts you ahead of your teammates, then. I'll have to start with chakra control then. He sighed. What a drag. Naruto snickered. Asuma raised an eyebrow at the youth. They each ate their meat. It was quite tasty when not burned. Naruto ended up mooching his sensei's meat once his meager grilling skills were exposed. So, Naruto broke the companionable silence. Why exactly are we on probation? Were you just too lazy to come up with a test? He was starting to see how his sensei operated. The man was laid back enough that Naruto wouldn't put it past him to abandon the notion of a test simply out of laziness. The bearded man chuckled at his student's cheek. They would get along fine. Partly. I don't really think that three genin who haven't worked together in the past can be accurately judged by some contrived exam. Most of the tests revolve around teamwork, and getting three genin to work together right off the bat isn't easy. Seeing how you three work together over the span of a month gives me a much more accurate view of you. Naruto nodded. But why? A group of three can learn to work together in a month. Doesn't that defeat the purpose of the test, if you just pass them at the end? The system seemed to be designed to allow the team to pass. Maybe, but you'd be surprised how hard it is to get along with your teammates on a day-to-day basis. I've had a couple of teams that can't handle it. At the end, you're either a team, or you have a few more skills to go to the reserve program with. It was a good system. Naruto nodded thoughtfully. How'd you get permission, though? A group of three going to the reserves a month late can't be good for organization. Being the son of the Hokage has some perks, Asuma said simply. Naruto wasn't sure, but he looked less than pleased with the notion that his name got him special treatment, despite his willingness to exploit it. Naruto knew the feeling. Anyway, be ready for tomorrow, Naruto. Asuma dropped the appropriate money on the table before walking out. He left a contemplative Naruto in his wake. Evenings in Konoha were Naruto's favorite time by far. Many wondered why Fire Country had its name, given its forested landscape. Those who did only had to spend a day in the sun to have their wonders assuaged. While Naruto had never been out of the country, he highly doubted that he'd ever find a place quite like Konoha. When the sun began to disappear behind the eastward-facing Hokages, Konoha came to life. From the lights of the shops to the lantern-lit streets, Konoha in the evening was a beautiful sight to behold. Bathed in moonlight under a clear, starlit sky, Konoha exuded an orange glow from nearly every corner. It was a sight to behold from on high, and it was this that originally led Naruto to his favorite haunt. The top of the Yandame's head. Much to the blonde's chagrin, at the moment, he wasn't at his favorite hangout spot. He was dragging himself through the streets on the way to one of his least favorite activities. Shopping. In all honesty, he'd rather stab himself in the eye rather than deal with the great village's shopkeepers. They had been the bane of his existence until he had reached the academy. They had then been replaced with the Chunin instructors, but they had remained quite the vexing problem. A brave few had refused him service in his youth, denying him the essentials needed to survive, but that had stopped once he had complained to the Hokage about mean storekeepers. He had had noticeably less trouble after that. Regardless, they had done their level best to make his life difficult soon after. While none had outright refused him, though some small shops still did, they had managed to discourage Naruto's patronage. Higher prices, dirty looks, poor treatment and more had greeted the whiskered blonde whenever he walked into a shop, and slowly, Naruto had learned to adapt. Being a scavenger hadn't been fun, but it had been necessary. Stealing had become a regular part of the boy's day for a time. He often wondered at the villagers' stupidity. They were perfectly willing to believe him a great demon hell-bent on destroying them all when it suited them, but when it didn't, he was just an idiotic nuisance. It was the only way Naruto could explain how he had managed to get away with stealing as much as he had in his youth, as he had been far from the competent genin he now was. It was like the villagers' opinions shifted whenever they felt like it, and they adapted to their situation. As annoying as it was, it had made life easier for Naruto, at least until he slipped up one day. 2 weeks and 1 official reprimand later, Naruto never let himself get caught stealing again. It was no easy task, given that all the shopkeepers stepped up their security and vigilance after that one time, but he had managed. It had even helped him with his skills in stealth. Stealing had been tough, and the results showed. It was no easy feat leading trained shinobi on village-wide chases, and Naruto had delighted in it for a few short months before the Uchiha massacre had wizened him up to the realities of life. Even so, he had managed to pull a few pranks on more than a few merchants after the fact. Watching the wealthy bastards wonder who stole their precious money and goods had been vindication of the highest level. It was even better when their attention eventually fell on him, and he could see how they so obviously wished that they could pin it on him. He had left no evidence of the fact, however. He'd be damned if he let the pricks ever get wind of him more than once. His waltz down memory lane halted as his body turned into a ninja supply shop. It was one that he frequented often, for he always needed supplies, and the owners didn't seem to mind him so much. They had immigrated after the Kyuubi attack and, while there was some stigma, they didn't have the loss of loved ones to pin on the beast in his gut. It helped that their merchandise was well made and priced pretty reasonably. Naruto gave a brief nod to the girl manning the counter as he picked up a basket. Wandering to the weapons section, Naruto perused the standard grade kunai and shuriken before picking out 2 full sets for himself. While not cheap, it was necessary, and the blonde had some money now that he was running constant D ranks with Team 10. He glanced over the Senbon needles and decided that he wouldn't splurge too much. While he had some serious pocket money, he still needed to use much of it for other essentials. He didn't really need Senbon anyway. His feet carried him to the clothing section, where Naruto's real objective laid. He had ripped another one of his trademark green shirts, and he was in short supply. He rounded a clothing rack moving toward the t-shirts when walked smack into his teammate. "Kami, Naruto, watch where you're going," Ino groused as she dusted herself off. Naruto huffed angrily. "I was watching. You were the one who couldn't take her eyes off the floor. Pay attention to where you look in small spaces," he grumbled heatedly. The blonde girl just shook her head tiredly and waved him off. "Yeah, whatever, Naruto." She moved to walk away. Naruto's interest was piqued, warning bells sounding loud and clear in his mind. Ino would never let him off the hook like that. She always had to be right about small things like that, and there was no way that she would let it go so easily. "You alright?" he called to her back. He was concerned. Ino turned back to him and offered a small smile. Naruto realized how haggard the girl looked for the first time. That made no sense though. Asuma hadn't held training today. "Yeah, Naruto, I'm alright. Just tired." "You don't look alright," Naruto pointed out bluntly. Subtlety had never been his strong suit when it came to people. An angry look flashed through Ino's eyes for but a moment before it was gone. It was replaced by the same tired look she had before. "Asuma and I talked about some stuff today. Stuff about being a good kunoichi and all that, and he gave me a bunch of stuff to think about." Naruto didn't question why the girl would even bother telling him this. "Anything I can help with?" he asked immediately. "You know, we're teammates and all and friends I guess, so if you need anything," he trailed off in his explanation, blushing slightly at the look his teammate was giving him. She looked to be sizing him up. A small smile made its way to her face. "I'm good, Naruto, but thanks anyway." "You're sure?" She nodded with a small snort. "I'm sure." Naruto scratched the back of his head, at a loss for words. Reassured and concern spent, the moment had just gotten awkward. "Well, I'll see you tomorrow then?" They had training in the morning. "Yeah," Ino said with a little giggle at his discomfort. He blushed lightly. "See you tomorrow." They went their separate ways, each with confused thoughts of the other blonde. The Sandaime silently regarded his son. With his pipe in mouth and serious expression, he gave the appearance of a truly stern, wise leader. It was a well-cultivated and practiced image. His son, likewise, had his game face on, though it differed from his father's. Posture slouched slightly, Asuma gave the appearance of the perfectly laid-back and lazy jonin. The image was completed by the cigarette perched at an angle in his mouth. It, too, was a cultivated image. Few people knew how intelligent and observant the chain smoker was. He intended to keep it that way. "You've had your month, what's your answer?" The Sandame's voice was gravelly and stern. Asuma knew that this would be all business. Just like it always was. He wasn't sure if he was truly sad about that. Team 10 has passed. They've showed the proper work ethic, teamwork, and cohesiveness that should be present in a genin team. Asuma was straight to the point and nearly monotonous. He exhaled a cloud of smoke, letting the aromas from the two tobaccos battle it out. The pipe tobacco was winning. And what of the three individually? They are remarkably similar in many ways. All three are loud, somewhat brash, and do nothing to hide their emotions from each other. Surprisingly enough, it translates to some pretty good teamwork. It almost makes the bickering bearable, Asuma said dryly. His father winced in sympathy for him. He was familiar with the personalities of all three. As it is, Naruto is the most mature of the three, though you wouldn't know it initially. It's like the boy can flip a switch in his brain sometimes. It's taken some time, but both Kiba and Ino defer to him when they're making executive decisions on the missions. The elder Sarutobi nodded, his face pensive. Naruto has a natural charisma that can draw people to him. It hasn't had much opportunity to assert itself in the village, but there are examples. Uchiha Sasuke is the most visible. How goes the boy's progress? Asuma took a seat. It was neither offered nor asked for. His father didn't react visibly. As well as to be expected. I introduced the water walking exercise just last week, and he's still struggling with it. His chakra reserves work against him at this point, though they'll be a boon later. The Sandame sat back in his chair and digested the information. It wasn't much, but it provided some insight as to the abilities of the boy he had once called a surrogate grandson. Naruto had distanced himself from the Hokage a few months into his first year in the academy, incidentally right around the time of the Uchiha massacre. He had heard from Mato Guy that he had taken the boy on as a part-time student, and Sarutobi had been concerned initially. Guy was well known for his harsh training techniques, and the idea of Naruto training under the man had made Sarutobi wary. He had allowed it because the boy wasn't getting any real help from his academy instructors, and short of Sarutobi outright ordering them, he wouldn't likely ever. The boy's time under Guy, sporadic that it was, had yielded results far greater than Sarutobi had initially dared to hope. The astounding progress was proof of the boy's innate talent and potential. The old man would be deluding himself if he wasn't happy for Naruto quite literally sticking it to his detractors in the academy. Young Iruka had been quite shocked when Naruto had suddenly jumped from dead last to middle of the pack in a single month. The trend had continued until he was the number 2 in the class. He quickly forced his wandering mind back to his son. The man was sitting impatiently in his chair. The elderly man inwardly sighed at the deterioration of their relationship. It was too bad that Asuma had inherited his stubbornness. "You look like you want to say something." The chain smoker seemed to mull something over. Guy did the boy a service by helping him when he did. Taijutsu is something that takes years to learn well, and is best learned at a young age. Because of Guy's tutelage, Naruto won't really have to worry about his taijutsu for years. Never, if he keeps practicing with the man. Interesting, the Sandame interrupted. But I recall telling you much the same when you first took Team 10. The old man winced at his harsh tone, he couldn't help it sometimes. Asuma barely reined in his glare. In any event, with his taijutsu as solid as it is, he has time to fully turn his attention to ninjutsu, he continued as if his father hadn't interrupted. I want permission to teach him the basics of elemental manipulation. The Hokage was stunned, though he didn't show it. Elemental manipulation was a skill practiced and honed by Chunin. Most genin had neither the chakra reserves nor the proper basics to begin learning the art. The idea of teaching it to a genin was rare, if not unheard of. It had happened with exceptional genin in the past. Is he truly that exceptional? Asuma nodded without hesitation. He is. His taijutsu is good enough to be neglected right now, and his chakra reserves are large enough that it makes sense for him to begin. He was being somewhat modest for his student. The boy's reserves were the size of his own. Genjutsu will never be his forte, though he shows serious drive in learning how to become immune to them. And what of his other teammates? Will they suffer from the extra attention to young Naruto? The Hokage was cracking. Asuma knew he had his father right where he wanted him. He barely withheld a smirk of victory as he put the final nail in the coffin. Not at all. I intend to leave Naruto to study the art mostly on his own time. The pipe nearly fell out of Horizon's mouth. He had never heard such a thing before. And you expect him to complete it to a reasonable degree? To do so would take nearly prodigious skill with ninjutsu. From what I've been able to glean from the boy, he's already muscled his way through 2 or 3 Doton techniques. It's an element that I suspect isn't even his primary one. The satisfaction was evident in his voice. Indeed? The ShonenAnime was being forced to reevaluate much of what he thought he knew about the blonde boy. He knew that the boy was skilled, and would likely become even more so as time passes, but to have this kind of talent was beyond the scope of Sarutobi's conceptions. For a newly minted genin to be able to use elemental ninjutsu, no matter how small, was incredible. It was the stuff of prodigies. Uchiha Sasuke had demonstrated the ability in his test with Itachi Kakashi, but that had almost been expected of the boy. The Uchiha were known for their battle prowess, and Sasuke was a genius even among them. For Naruto to show comparable skill, it was nearly mind-boggling. He couldn't help but be impressed, both by the facts and the reality that the boy had kept it hidden from so many people who, unbeknownst to Naruto, had been watching him quite closely. What, exactly, would your plan for Naruto entail? Asuma just smiled. You know, it honestly wasn't what I was expecting. Sasuke pulled out his trademark HN, as a response. I mean, I expected that the whole aspects of team training could be boring, but D-ranked missions? They're a fucking embarrassment, Naruto said heatedly. HN. Sasuke casually slurped some more of his ramen. Just last week, we're babysitting for this woman, apparently had urgent business in Hokage, probably a gambling vacation to get away from her kids, and Kiba starts flipping out on the kids because they were trying to braid Akamaru's hair. Naruto threw his hands up in exasperation. He ends up chasing the 7-year-old, a 7-year-old girl, around the house for 5 minutes. Somehow, someway, he spilled new paint all over one of the rooms. Sasuke actually snickered at the blonde's predicament. He dares. Naruto thought violently. He continued in the same vein, doing his best to ignore his unsympathetic friend. The person tending the house comes back, he's pissed, and we have to repaint the whole room the same day. We didn't even get paid. Naruto trailed off with a grumble. That sounds like the mutt, Saki said simply. Any other worthy moments or note? Naruto shook his head as he finished his second bowl of ramen. Not really. It's been pretty dull otherwise. He perked up quickly. Though what Ino did to Kiba after that mission was downright vicious. Sasuke chuckled. Was that when she had him go around town in nothing but a pink dress for a day? Naruto nodded bemusedly. Yeah. You heard about that? The pink harpy was gushing about it for the 2 hours we sat waiting for Kakashi. Apparently the yellow harpy told her. Naruto chuckled in appreciation of their old nicknames for Sasuke's biggest fangirls. He took a little offense for Ino, though. Outside the presence of Sasuke and Sakura, she wasn't that bad. He would admit that he was warming to the girl. I heard that Hitachi's always late. I guess there's truth to that. Sasuke nodded with a scowl. 2 to 3 hours. Every day. Naruto chortled. Sounds pretty bad. Asuma-sensei's never late. He didn't recoil at the heated glare that Sasuke sent his way. Served the bastard right for mocking him earlier. You don't know the half of it, Sasuke grumbled. Naruto nearly cracked up at the thought of Sasuke actually grumbling. Just when I was getting the timing right so I could show up a few minutes before he did, he actually shows up on time. I got an official reprimand for being late to a meeting, and I know he did it on purpose. Naruto couldn't help laughing at his friend's predicament. It was just too funny. Sucks, man. What about the rest of the bunch? They any good? Not a chance, idiot. Nara's lazier than Kakashi on his best day, and I can count the number of times that Sakura's done something useful on one hand. Yep, Sasuke was pissed. Between Nara's laziness, Kakashi's lateness, and Sakura's idiocy, we almost never train. You think you've got it bad, Dobe? We do nothing but D-ranked missions. I've taken to getting back into my old routine in the mornings, considering I've got nothing else to do, Damn, that sucked. Sasuke was somewhat famous for waking up at the crack of dawn to begin training. Naruto followed the boy's example, to a limited extent. Ouch. I take it you haven't learned much new, team? Sasuke shrugged, his anger somewhat spent. Not much, but Kakashi tossed me a new Katan Jutsu last week. Probably compensation for everything. The only team training we do is Taijutsu. I'm lucky if I get to spar with Kakashi. Naruto nodded to himself. He was likely learning more than he thought. He was likely getting some battle experience from sparring with a jonin like Kakashi. That and those eyes of his taught on their own. The blonde couldn't say that he learned all that much either. The gap in skill between him and his teammates was a virtual chasm, now that he could see it properly. As such, Asuma was stuck helping Ino and Kiba with their various deficiencies. Naruto was more than happy to note that they were becoming fewer and fewer. Regardless, Asuma had helped him with his chakra control in the last week, and had started him on some training with dual kunai. Naruto hoped that this would lead into the man teaching him how to fight with those trench knives of his. Naruto ended his musings as he heard Sasuke renew his grumbling. He shook his head. Team 7 must really be something special if Sasuke was this emotional about it. At least Naruto has a brain hidden somewhere in that skull of his. I'm starting to think that Sakura has nothing but air between her ears. Book smart my ass, Sasuke griped. He took a long sip of his tea. Naruto nodded absently. Ino said that Sakura has some good chakra control. Maybe you could use that angle to get Kakashi to give some serious training? Sasuke shook his head. Already tried. All it accomplished was Kakashi having us do the tree climbing exercise for a week. He's still having Haruno do it on a regular basis. She's got fuck all chakra compared to everyone else, apparently. Whoa! Sasuke almost never cursed. It was beneath someone of such noble Uchiha blood, in the boy's mind. Damn. Naruto thought fast. Sasuke was liable to kill the pink-haired girl at this rate. Good chakra control is required of genjutsu specialist or medic nin, right? Maybe an offhand mention. Sasuke just sneered. She doesn't have the temperament or disposition for either. She's either pestering me or trying to kill Shikamaru for interfering in our conversations. What she is useless. Holy shit. No wonder he was so damn vicious in our spar. Sounds like she needs a good beating to set her straight. The Uchiha scoffed. Don't I know it, but Kakashi doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. Aside from chakra control, he's been drilling us on basics. I'm this close to going to the Hokage about it. He held his fingers about an inch apart. Yeah, Asuma-sensei's been doing basics too. Naruto carefully steered the conversation away from Sasuke's Team 7 woes. I don't know how Kiba managed to pass the academy without being able to hold a kunai right, but at least Ino has a solid grounding. I'm hoping Asuma-sensei starts moving us onto some actual ninjutsu, rather than just basics and strategy. The man had been pestering him to pick up shogi. Naruto still hadn't managed to plow through the rulebook. Damn, if that game wasn't complex. I forgot you had the yellow harpy on your team. He smirked slightly, his own woes forgotten at the moment. Naruto shook his head. She's not that bad, actually. She's actually pretty focused during training. He was happy to say that he had a newly budding friendship with his fellow blonde. She was surprisingly bearable around him these days. It was a pleasant change up from their academy days. Whatever you say, dope. Are you sure you aren't being a bit, soft with her? He smirked devilishly. After all, you know what they say, there's nothing so bad as something not so bad. Naruto scowled, though there was a distinct redness to his cheeks. Shut it, team! She's pretty decent, and I thought we agreed never to mention that again. Sasuke was the only one who knew that Naruto had nursed quite the silent affection for the blonde Yamanaka during their first years in the academy. It had lasted until she had started chasing after Sasuke like he was a piece of meat. I don't remember ever agreeing to anything, idiot. Naruto raised a challenging eyebrow. Oh? What about that whole agreement about me never mentioning anything to Kiba about you and his SI? His smirk was triumphant, as Sasuke slapped a hand over his mouth. Not a word. Sasuke growled. Of course. Hey chumps, I heard my name. Speak of the devil and he shall appear. Naruto smirked. Kiba had impeccable timing. Nothing to be bothered with, mutt. Sasuke recovered in the blink of an eye. Naruto here was going over your numerous deficiencies in training. Kiba just humphed. Bite me, Uchiha. We both know that I can take either of you any day. You'd like to think that, wouldn't you, Mutt? Kiba growled. Screw you, asshole. We both know I'm bigger and stronger than you. Sasuke's eyes gleamed. Maybe so, but everyone knows that you're lacking size where it counts. Naruto couldn't contain his laughter at Kiba's face as the insult sunk in. The raven-haired youth was being downright vicious today. Fuck you, Uchiha. I'll beat your ass. Akamaru barked along with his partner. Settle down, children, Naruto managed around his laughter. He mentally patted himself on the back for diffusing the situation in such a cool way. We're all friends here. Yeah, screw both of you, Kiba grumbled. Sasuke was back to his aloof self, it seemed. Naruto shrugged. What are you doing around here, Kiba? Didn't think you ate ramen? I don't. My mom says that stuff'll stunt my growth. I'm not exactly lacking size, he sent a pointed glare at the smirking Sasuke, but you can never be too careful. I was looking for you actually. We've got training in 30. Naruto assumed that he didn't want to show up to the training ground with only Ino there to meet him. Their arguments were becoming somewhat legendary. He checked the time. Shit, gotta go, Sasuke. Whatever, dope. Just pay for your share. Naruto dropped the appropriate money on the countertop. Later, team. See ya, old man. Come back soon, old man, Tuchi called from the back. Naruto would make a point to talk to him and his daughter the next time he came by the stand. He always enjoyed the simple conversations he had with his first friends. Naruto and Kiba ambled through the early afternoon traffic in an amiable silence. Naruto took his time seeing the sights and basking in the non-attention he got. The forehead protector was a nice deterrent for the villagers' glares. Kiba spent his time playing with Akamaru and leering at the passing village girls and women. Honestly, Kiba, you're gonna get slapped if you keep that up. Damn hormonal genin. Naruto could appreciate a fine specimen, but Kiba was just ridiculous. Please, Naruto, a woman appreciates guys checking her out. It's flattering. It's not flattering when your drool gets on their shoes. Kami only knows how you turned out how you did with your mother and sister, Naruto argued. Bah, you wouldn't know the first thing to do with a woman, Naruto. That may be true, but if I watch you long enough, I'll end up knowing what not to do. Naruto smirked. That's got to count for something. Kiba glared. There was no real heat behind it, though. I don't know why you doubt me? You and Ino both. You two deserve each other for all the crap you give me. Naruto chuckled. He might make a pass if he thought he had a shot with the other blonde. Kiba, we're 12. No one our age is an expert on women. Least of all you. I beg to differ, Naruto. Chicks are drawn to me like a moth to flame. More like fleas to a dog, Kiba. Naruto laughed outright at Kiba's outraged expression. How do you reckon they're so attracted to you? Kiba puffed up. I've got 2 words for you, animal magnetism. Naruto snorted. And I've got 2 words for you, body odor. It's probably why all these nice people are giving us such a wide berth. Naruto gestured to the gap they were creating in the midday crowds. The reality was that the gap was because most people were giving Naruto a wide berth, but if a little misdirection got Kiba to shower more, who cared? Fuck you, Naruto. The boy in question just laughed his way to the training ground. When they arrived at training ground 10, the 2 boys were surprised to see their remaining squad mates already there. Ino had her hands locked in the rat seal. Asuma looked pensive, though his gaze flickered around the clearing. His eyes didn't even register the arrival of Naruto and Kiba. Abruptly, Ino dropped the seal and Asuma reverted to normal. Well? The girl asked expectantly. Asuma nodded to the girl. Impressive. Just make sure to be throwing your kunai and shuriken in a way for the clones to mimic you. Ino nearly squealed in delight. Are we late, Asuma-sensei? Kiba asked. Asuma turned to regard his other 2 students. The Jonin checked the time. Nope, you're right on time. I was just helping Ino-chan out with a few techniques. Naruto was interested. Anything for the rest of us? He asked. The bearded man shook his head. Nothing you'd be interested in, Naruto. Genjutsu, he elaborated at the look Naruto sent him. The blonde boy scowled. It wasn't his fault he had no real aptitude for the illusion art. In any event, Asuma began anew, lighting a cigarette up. We have a new play for the playbook. The playbook was the group of team maneuvers that Team 10 had drilled. He formed a strange hand seal. The team of genin watched in awe as a duplicate of their sensei appeared in a puff of smoke. It was a corporal clone, too. Naruto could see the shadow. For the next hour, you three will be attempting to entrap and take out my Kagebunshin here. If you could explain the purpose behind the technique you were just practicing? Of course, sensei. She approached the two boys. Naruto could see that the girl was excited about having learned a new technique. The genjutsu is called Kasumi Jusha no Jutsu. It creates a group of imaginary clones to surround the enemy and trick them into thinking our numbers are a lot bigger than they are. For the next hour, the three genin wandered about the forest surrounding the training ground, attempting to subdue Asuma's shadow clone. They finally managed it at the end, due to Ino's effective use of genjutsu, Kiba's tracking abilities, and Naruto's linear speed. The rest of practice was spent sparring, Ino versus Kiba, and Asuma versus Naruto, and practicing chakra control. Both Ino and Kiba were struggling with the water walking exercise. In between Naruto learning to use dual blades, Asuma taught him the basics of the Shunshin, Naruto having the required control to attempt it. It was far from simple. The D-rank ninjutsu required a fine balance of chakra channeled to the legs, or else the jutsu would implode on the user. It was similar to the Kawarimi in that sense. The whole process needed to be drilled into Naruto's head before he could attempt it. That, combined with the ungodly amount of concentration the jutsu took to use well, meant that Naruto was far from mastering the jutsu. He knew that the jutsu would be worth its weight in gold. Moving through the village at high speeds would not only cut down his travel time, and it would limit the amount of glares the villagers could send his way. That, and running through the streets was so civilian. It was unbefitting of someone such as him. Naruto, stay back a minute, will you? Asuma asked at the end of the practice. Ino and Kiba were limping their way out of the clearing. Naruto was about ready to do the same. He was tired, sore, cut up, and his chakra coils ached like nobody's business. What's up, sensei? Asuma rummaged around in his utility pouch for a moment before withdrawing a small square of paper and a storage scroll. I have a side project for you. Elemental manipulation. Naruto knew his eyes were the size of saucers, but he didn't care. Sensei? He questioned in disbelief. Isn't that a skill reserved for Chunin and Jonin? It is. The Jonin had an immensely satisfied look on his face from having stunned his student. I think, and my father agrees with me, that it is something worthwhile for you to learn. Naruto blinked twice. From what information he could glean about the elusive art, it was attempted by Chunin in order to become more proficient in ninjutsu. It was a well-known requirement for most Jonin to have mastered, or at least have use of, 2 elements. For a genin to begin training in the art. Not that I'm complaining, sensei, but why are you teaching me this? It's a skill for Chunin and Jonin for a reason. Naruto was confused, and he didn't like it. I've never known you to doubt your own skills, Naruto. Why start now? Asuma looked genuinely puzzled. No. I'm not doubting myself. It's just that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A genin learning elemental ninjutsu is almost unheard of, Naruto countered. He felt that he was arguing against himself, but he wanted to know why. The man had to have a reason. Asuma nodded sagely, taking a drag on his cigarette. Almost unheard of. You seem to be pretty well informed. Do you know of any others who learned this skill at your rank? Naruto shrugged. Hatake Kakashi, Uchiha Itachi, the Yondaime was reputed to have used elemental techniques at a young age. He trailed off. Where was this going? Asuma nodded with a pleased expression, inwardly impressed with the depth of his student's knowledge. He wondered where it came from. Naruto wasn't particularly academically inclined. All exceptional ninja in their youth. They all became more exceptional as they got older. That was quite the veiled compliment. You're putting me in with the likes of those 3? The chain smoker shrugged. I'm saying that you've got potential. Your abilities with taijutsu place well above your peers. Your genjutsu is weak, but you can both detect and dispel most ordinary illusions. You've managed a few rudimentary Doton techniques, and that monster in your gut pretty much ensures that you've got some huge chakra reserves. The man threw his cigarette to the ground and stamped it out. I'm not saying this for it to go to your head, Naruto, but your ninjutsu capabilities are nearly unheard of in a genin. Ninjutsu and taijutsu are going to be your bread and butter, and your taijutsu is good enough, and will keep getting better, so we can leave it be for the moment. Naruto was nodding his head along with his sensei's assessment of his abilities. It was flattering to say the least. It was certainly nice to have his skills validated. Even more so, the waves of pride that were coming off Asuma were making him feel happier than he had in a long time. He wouldn't let him down. "What do I have to do?" he asked. Asuma's face lit up. "Just channel some chakra into this paper, here." He handed over the square. Naruto focused intently on the white square, and channeled his chakra. He was notably surprised when it split in 2 even halves. Asuma seemed even more delighted than before. "Well, that makes this even better," he said to himself. At Naruto's questioning face, he continued, "The paper you just used is specially cared for and soaked with chakra. It allows for ninja to determine their elemental affinity simply by channeling chakra into it. If the paper burns, it's fire. If it crinkles, it's lightning. If it gets wet, it's water. If it crumbles, it's earth. And if it splits, it's wind," Naruto finished in an excited whisper. "Aren't you wind-natured, sensei?" "I am," he confirmed. "That makes this all the easier once you complete the proper exercises. I'll be able to teach you plenty of futon techniques. You're lucky too, that I'm your sensei. Wind isn't really common in Konoha, and I can only think of 1 or 2 other users who are any good." Naruto was excited, he couldn't deny that. Here he was, a genin, learning elemental manipulation from a man who could teach him to harness his affinity better than everyone else in the village. Things were looking up. "You mentioned exercises?" "Ah, yes." He handed over the storage scroll. "In here, you'll find a collection of exercises for becoming more proficient with every element. They're considered the basic exercises that every ninja should know about their element before attempting to learn elemental ninjutsu. Without them, trying out techniques is like taking a shot in the dark." Naruto's eyebrows were in his hairline. "The fact that you can use 2 techniques, both of them outside your primary affinity, speaks of the potential I was talking about earlier. So, I've got huge-ass chakra reserves, ninjutsu talent, and potential beyond the norm. Fantastic." He barely kept himself from fist pumping. It was about time things started getting easier for him. "This is going to be a side project for you, so that means that you won't be working on it so much in practice with the rest of the team, but feel free to come to me with any questions." Naruto just nodded his head. Asuma ruffled his hair affectionately as he lit up another cigarette on his way out of the clearing. "Try to enjoy yourself." "Thanks, sensei," Naruto responded weakly. He absently opened the scroll. Kanji representing wind, earth, fire, lightning, and water were arrayed before him. A quick application of chakra later, and the wind element was opened. Leaf splitting exercise, interesting.
What If's Legends fans, watch my other videos. Part 2 is on the screen. Click quickly.